Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Morrison. I'm the chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to our regular meeting of Wednesday, May the 1st, 2024. I'd like to start by just asking everyone with electronic devices to either turn them off or put them on mute. And I'd like to begin by recognizing that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Liaxin, Pakwichan, Dot, and Dot nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. Turn to Ms. Harrison, item 1.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The first item is approval of the agenda, and we have 3 new business items. NB1 is a information item, a piece of correspondence in regard to UB1.
Apparently we're having a technical difficulty. We're not, the people online are unable to hear the microphones. And magically, help arrives. Shall we try again? Somebody who's online at home or remote, can you please tell me if you can hear me? Mr. Mooney, can you hear me? Director Stone gave us the thumbs down. Director Stone gave us the thumbs. We're working on it. Okay, we're going to recess for 5. And we're back. Turn to Ms. Harrison for number 1 on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Item number 1 is approval of the agenda. And there are 3 new business items, one with 2 parts. The first new business item is NB1, and it's information correspondence in regard to item UB1. Item NB2 is an information item of correspondence in regard to item R2 on the agenda. And item NB3 is information correspondence, there are 2, in regard to item R3 on the agenda.
Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. And I guess I don't have to watch the screen for directors at home, so that's wonderful. Ms. Harrison, number 2.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Item 2 is adoption of the minutes, and the recommendation before you is that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of April 17th, 2024 be adopted.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Item 3, Ms. Harrison.
Item 3 is business arising. There is none. And then we move to public input.
Thank you. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the committee considers the item. Public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes, where the speaker is welcome to comment on any items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been the subject of a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner using respectful language, civility, and decorum. Now I would like to invite anyone that would like to provide public input to the lectern or to the microphone. We're all ears. Welcome. Press the button on the mic.
Hello, Chair and Directors. It's Adriana speaking on behalf of COPE and its members in the CBRD. I'm just speaking on the bylaw, the enforcement bylaw. I see a pattern here throughout the region over and over again. This pattern is one of punishment towards the regular folks just trying to make a life in the valley. Currently, there are more restrictions over people's property than ever before in history. In fact, it would have been preferable to have been ruled over by lords and ladies in the past than by current bureaucrats. When people staked their land and began to build homesteads, did they purposefully ruin their land, or did they create warm and inviting homesteads and raise food, meat, and care with love for their land and animals, almost as if it was innate? It seems citizens are infantilized by local and senior governments to the extreme these days, behaving as if people in offices know more about or care more about the land of the people who own it and tend to it. This bylaw conveniently leaves out intensive residential units, multifamily development resorts, and specifically targets the lowly citizens who own land and allow such vague language under what could be considered a development permit area, such as promoting the reduction of greenhouse gases, leaving interpretation up to a person in an office somewhere, and further restricts the use of land that people are paying over 16% taxes for. If you are charged under BC Offences Act, the fine is $2,000. Distracted driving is $344. Drinking and driving above .08 limit is $500 fine. But if you alter a barn on your land, you could face a $50,000 fine. This is frankly out of control, and I do not see any wording stating that there would be warnings or a dialogue between the landowner and the CBRD before they are slapped with this astronomical fee. And what is the fee based on? It's completely unclear. I speak to so many that have been harassed by the CBRD on their lands that they live in fear.
Excuse me, I'm going to ask you to stop. Your language is so close to being over the line. Could you please moderate your language? Our staff do not harass people. It may be your opinion, but that language is unacceptable.
Okay, I will do. I do interview them, but I will. So just give me a second to find where I was. Okay, for instance, section 62 states that if a person neglects to do anything required to be done under any provision of this bylaw, neglect can mean someone doesn't understand or overlooked a part by accident. They could get slapped with $50,000. And then it goes on to say the violation is a daily fee. We ask that you add some humanity into this bylaw amendment by sending it back to staff to reduce the fee significantly to reflect closer to the provincial fine structures, place the onus of delivering the feedback solely onto a bylaw officer, and adding in a warning clause with a graduated fee structure that is much clearer in wording and not left up to the whims of or mood of an officer of the day. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. I'd like to ask if anyone else would like to provide input to committee members today on agenda items. Welcome, sir.
Bruce Alexander. I used to say that my home is in the heart of Glenora. If not metaphorically speaking, at least geographically. For the past few years, I'm just recently trying to come up with an up-to-date way of describing my home. Perhaps something like, perhaps a Western version of what's happening in the Middle East right now. It's, for a few years now, 3-4 years, I've lived in utter fear, paralyzing, crippling fear of the combination of CVRD and my neighbors. I bought my home from the man who's still my neighbor. As a teenager, he lived in my home. We were very friendly. I was very friendly to him. And something triggered him into calling on the CVRD repeatedly, over and over again. So for the past few years, I have approached the CVRD, bylaw enforcement and so on, seeking a good way for everybody to go forward. But what I've been finding is that the CVRD, in conjunction with the court process, and by the way, when I was invited to court, summoned, I nearly had a heart attack. When the man, the bylaw enforcer, showed up with the invitation to court, I nearly had a heart attack from this man who I pay for his home and all of his, through my taxes, I pay for this man who is destroying my life in conjunction with a broken process.
I'd like to please caution you in the sincerest and kindest way I can that the words destroying your life are attributing that to a member of this staff isn't appropriate in this place. I can understand that this is an emotional item for you, but I would ask you to please refrain from what is very detrimental remarks such as that. Please. Proceed.
I yesterday had a discussion with another bylaw officer to do with the whole thing, in which we discussed gang stalking, which is something I know a lot about. Gang stalking is processes that, with intention to force a person out of community or to suicide. And I am being forced out of my home. Last summer, I sought to sell my home to get away from my neighbors. That didn't happen. Last week, in hearing from the CVRD again, I decided to give a lot of thought to just leaving my home for quite some time.
Mr. Alexander, your time is up. I've given you an extension beyond the normal 3 minutes. Could you conclude your remarks, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I, at this time, as I discussed with bylaw yesterday, and I'm reaching out to more people with CVRD, looking for ways to do, I'm looking for good approaches. And by the way, I have been involved for 40 years with the type of societal structures that we all need. I really look forward to some good ways forward.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite anyone else who would like to provide input to committee today to please come forward.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking taking the time to listen to me. My name is Susan Whittam, and I live at 5260 Coaks Isle Road. And I just wanted to come and let the committee know that there's some of us that are opposed to the rezoning of R3 is the agenda item, concerned about the rezoning of that to increase the density and to accommodate the revised proposal of a multi-story apartment building in our rural neighborhood. And I know that this is a process that's unfolding, but I just wanted people to be aware that us neighbors aren't totally pleased about this idea. And we don't think that rezoning, I'll just speak for myself, I don't think that the rezoning is appropriate in this setting. And I'm going to follow this and see where it goes, but I wanted you guys to know. Thank you for your time. I dropped my paper.
Thank you very much for your input. I believe we have a few minutes left. Anyone else like to provide input to committee today?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make the meeting, so I had sent an email out, but I'll read it here just so it's into the record. Good afternoon. My name is Susan Kaufman, and I am from Salem. I'm just going to read my email. I'm writing to you in response to several items on today's agenda, housing being a major concern, and the length of time it is taking to realize the MOCP and comprehensive zoning bylaw. Housing, it is increasingly evident that the CVRD needs to adopt a regional planning strategy to address the housing needs in the Cowichan Valley. North Cowichan and Duncan have been excelling in creating 1 and 2 bedroom apartment buildings, which is the correct place for them, close to services, transit, walkability, water, and sewer infrastructure already in place. What is missing is homes for families. Duplexes, fourplexes, and town or row homes, and cooperative housing. We need space for families and multi-generational families. Children should not be raised in apartment buildings. On the MOCP and zoning front, to help achieve our goals, we need to have in place a modern OCP and zoning bylaw to identify where and what kind of housing is appropriate. We need thoughtful development that reflects what the community has identified as important and not solely driven by the development community. We also need to work with the province and other government agencies, such as school districts, to ensure that we have the schools and daycares to meet and grow with our communities. To this end, we need to have zoning in place that would allow for these possibilities. There is a sense of urgency for this work to be completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaufman. Is there anyone else who would like to provide input to committee today? Seeing no one else, go to the next item. Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The next item is delegations. We have none. Correspondence, we have none.
We have a bunch, but.
Oh, sorry. So item C1 is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area A, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area A, Mill Bay Malahat, in the amount of $250 be provided to the Cowichan Green community to support the Cowichan Valley Climate Solutions Expo.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Item C2, recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Cowichan Regional Visitor Center to support ongoing efforts to the Visitor Center.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director McClinton. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. C3, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. C3 is a grant and aid, Electoral Area C, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid, Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Cowichan Valley Primary Care Society to assist with startup funds for a nonprofit society.
Moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director McClinton. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Next item C4 is a grant and aid, Electoral Area D. Recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $250 be provided to the Cowichan Green community to support the Cowichan Valley Climate Solutions Expo at the Hub on May 25th, 2024.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Next item, C5, is a grant and aid request, Electoral Area D, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Cowichan Estuary Nature Center to assist in the costs of running the Sea Squirts program.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Next item is C6. It's a grant and aid request for Electoral Area D. Recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $500 be provided to the Francis Kelsey Dry Grad Committee to support the Francis Kelsey 2024 Dry Grad Celebration.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director McClinton. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Item C7 is a grant and aid request, Area D, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,500 be provided to the Francis Kelsey Secondary School for two 750 bursaries for two graduating students that reside in Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, to support their future education or training.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Next item, C8, is a grant and aid request, Area D. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,500 be provided to the Cowichan Secondary School for two 750 bursaries for two graduating students that reside in Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, to support their future education or training.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. I think that takes us to information, does it not?
Yes, Chair Morrison. We have one information item. Item IN1 is the Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill Community Parks Advisory Commission minutes of April 8th, 2024 for information.
Director Wilson, did you want to make your colleagues and everyone aware of anything particular in this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just to update for you, the cenotaph works are going ahead. We've got some really good donations from various businesses, and we're hoping to get that all finished by Remembrance Day this year, and construction of the band shell in the parkland should start later on this year as well. So.
Great news. That's an information item. On to number 8, reports. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Item R1 is a report from Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 24G02 for 11193 Chemainus Road, PID 000284041, and the applicant was in the lobby. Would you like me to admit him?
Yes, please. Welcome, Ms. Woods.
Thank you, Director, Chair. Sorry. Thank you, Chair Morrison. It's been a long day already. Hello, Hello, committee. DVP 24G02 is a DVP requesting to vary section 5.44 of Electoral Area G zoning bylaw to reduce the front parcel line setback from 7.5 meters to 4.67 meters for the siting of an accessory building. Oh, sorry.
There it is.
Do I have to get rid of this? Yeah. Is this, okay. Oh, okay. So the subject, can you go back one? Yes, please, thanks. The subject property is a relatively narrow oceanfront parcel located at 11193 Chemainus Road. It's approximately 250 meters from the northwest of the Davis Lagoon. It contains an existing single-unit dwelling and a garage. A steep slope is present on the north or the ocean side of the residential structures. The applicant would like to construct a freestanding carport in front of the existing garage. Due to the shape and topography of the parcel, the freestanding carport will be sited within 7.5 meters of the front parcel line setback. And next slide, please. And the recommendation is before you.
Thank you. Will you entertain questions if we have any? I'll go to committee. Any questions for staff on this item? Director McClinton.
Thank you for the report. This is great. I just, at the end there, I think you said the setback's 7.5, but it's being reduced to, yeah, is that right? Yeah.
Sorry, through the chair, yes, correct. It's going to be sited within the 7.5 meter setback.
Within.
It will be, yeah, at 4.67, I think, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, for this lot and where it is, it makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, did you say we have an applicant in attendance online?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Yes, the applicant, Glenn Mick, is actually in the meeting.
Fantastic. Now would be the opportunity if you've got anything that you would like to add or at this point, the floor is yours.
No, I think it's, Rashenda's done a really good job of pulling all the information together. Hopefully we've got all the reports and everything we need to go forward with this. Just if there's any questions or comments, I'd be willing, or more than willing to speak to them.
Well, thank you, and I'll go to committee and ask, are there any questions for the applicant at this time? Appears we have no questions for you, so thank you very much for attending. You can hang on there and listen to the discussion. If we go to Director McClinton now, would you like to introduce the resolution, Director McClinton?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
And we have a seconder. Ms. Harrison, could you read the recommendation, please?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 24G02 for 11193 Chemainus Road, PID 000264041, to reduce the front parcel line setback for the construction of an accessory building be issued.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. For the applicant's benefit, that should be appearing at the next board meeting, which will be Wednesday, May the 8th, 2024. Thank you for attending today. Thank you, Ms. Woods.
Thank you, committee.
Next item.
Thank you very much.
R2.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Item R2 is a report from Development Services Division regarding application number RZ24B01, Easter seals, and there is a 17-point recommendation.
Just 17. Mr. Buchan, the floor is yours.
Afternoon, and thank you. The purpose of this report is to present an application to rezone the Easter Seals Camp located on the east side of Shawnigan Lake. The application is proposing to amend the official community plan and zoning bylaw in order to update the camp facility and provide opportunities for year-round uses at the site. Next slide, please. The applicant proposes to consolidate the zoning into a single comprehensive development zone and add additional uses that would support year-round use of this camp facilities including items like tourist accommodation outside of the summer camp season. And the map on slide is for the lakeside portion of the lands. Next slide, please. On the east side of the road, in addition to the fields, the applicant notes that some of the lands could be suitable for future staff housing, student housing, or general workforce housing. There's also note that this could be potentially future subdivided depending on works servicing sewer and water. Next slide, please. We've received preliminary responses from internal CVRD divisions, namely from Parks and Trails, Economic Development, Utilities, Environmental Services. These responses are provided on Attachment J in their staff report and summarized on page 2. Next slide, please. The board is being asked to consider referrals to external agencies. External agency referral will be addressed through a subsequent report through the EASC, along with further refinements of the plan, some of which may be in response to external agency feedback. Next slide, please. There's a different version at my desk, my apologies. If desired, the board could seek additional information prior to advancing this application to external agency referrals. Some of the examples of additional information are detailed on page 7 of the staff report, and further refinement is detailed on page 6. Seeking additional information at this stage would not prevent the board from future requests for additional information when and if referral agency feedback is being provided. I'm here for questions, and the agent is in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan. So I've had the director for the area ask me for an opportunity to share some general thoughts, and normally our procedure would be where I was thinking now is probably appropriate or a better time. So that procedurally, we would generally go questions for for staff from directors, and then go to the applicant, and they have some material that they want to provide to us. But I think in this case, pretty substantial project, and perhaps we could hear from the director for the area, and then go to questions for staff. So, Director Acton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to staff and the Easter Seals Camp. I guess I just wanted to be able to have the opportunity to set what's important to the community, and that's what we do here. Is at the end of the day, we try and see what's important to the community. And I didn't want to get lost in the details of the stormwater and the water, and all those things don't happen anyway. So what's important to the community is understanding the uses desired in the zoning, because in the end, that's that's where we get to make our decisions. And I can bring this up later, but our values in the community, our values are the nature, we're heavily forested. We value our natural assets of Baldy Mountain and the lake, and our heritage and history, as we have displayed through our new construction of our expansion of our museum, and how the communities come together with the Kinsel Trestle. So those are the things that were also outlined in the community engagement. I think it was attachment J, but I think it'd just be great to hear from the applicant too.
Thank you for bringing that forward, and now I would go to committee and see if we have any questions for staff. Well, we've got Mr. Buchan on the hot seat. Director McClinton.
So I'm curious, I actually didn't know this, that so nonprofit societies don't pay taxes, and with this rezoning, I mean, is there going to be any change with that? Like, are they going to remain a society? Because it seems like there's going to be a little bit more profit.
I think that's more a question for the applicant.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions? Director Nicholson, your turn.
Thank you. This is such a big application and I'm wondering, how do you decide when you got enough information to bring it to us? Like, is this like testing the water, or is this like moving it forward?
Through the chair, this is a preliminary report, so this is an opportunity for the board to consider the application. If there's no interest in the application, the applicant would be required to work under existing zoning and would have to amend their plans. If the board is interested in the application, we can refer out to external agencies. We can ask for more information to help refine that referral, or we can have a broad referral. Does that help to answer the question?
Right, so in this case, we're excited perhaps that we would like to see this place revitalized, but maybe the information here is not
Yeah, so
doing enough?
on page 7 of the report, there's some ideas for additional information that could be
On page
requested.
7. Okay, thanks.
And for committee's consideration, you should note that differentiating the preliminary reports from ones that have been more fulsomely developed are something that has been raised, and I believe staff are looking at a way of indicating that when we've got a preliminary report and the considerations and the fact that it may not be as fulsomely developed as a subsequent report might be. So with that, I go to Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so thank you for that, Director Nicholson. I think it's reasonable to look for more information. And I would also like to say that the community wants to see Easter seals successful, and we understand that they would need to redefine themselves in order to do that and to renovate and everything. If it was anyone else presenting a resort, I'm sure it would have stopped at staff and said like, no, I don't think the community is interested in developing on the lake. But we do want to see them succeed and offer their services, to the greater, to the Vancouver Island. But I think we will, so it is reasonable to this question of staff to ask for more information on the proposed uses for both sides of the property, as stated in your staff report. And is it reasonable to ask for a heritage plan, because there's a significant history to the site that I'd love to share with you guys if Easter Seals doesn't. And so it's really important to the community. Would it be reasonable?
Why don't we let him go with that one first?
Okay.
That first question. So, Mr. Buchan,
Okay.
go ahead.
So through the chair, yes, it is reasonable to ask for additional information at this point. And to the point on heritage, I believe the lion is identified on our heritage designation as a potential candidate for a heritage registry. So that's something that staff could either follow up in a separate report or deal with through the rezoning application.
Okay, great. Yeah, because that is really important. The whole site has great historical significance, and I can share that if they don't. And then I can see that in future when this, or when and if, but I can see it going forward eventually to the APC. The APC will want to see a lighting plan. Will that be reasonable to ask for? And I think they will also want to see more information on the wrapper report, but I don't think we need that at this time.
Mr. Buchan?
Yes, so on page 7, there is comments here about looking for confirmation that the stormwater management plan is consistent with the riparian areas protection regulation as well as the Water Sustainability Act. That could be expanded to include things like the sewer, the buildings, those sorts of things, and could be including the lights.
Okay.
Director Segal?
Thank you, through the chair. I would like to see more information on the water and sewer, and particularly there's some details around the growth containment boundary and if it's possible to connect with the community sewer and water in the future. And I'm just wondering, that we've got 17 referrals, but APC isn't on there, Parks isn't on there, and I'm not sure where we're at with our accessibility committee, but this seemed like a really great place to refer there.
Mr. Buchan?
And through the chair, the APC and Parks are not on there because at the present, the referral is broad. So if the board wishes to focus the referral, we would then add those referral agencies to the list. The idea would be that with these agencies, it would be a broad referral, come back, get more information, and then go to the APCs and PAC.
And just remind everyone, we've got the applicants here that brought additional information as well, so we want to make sure that they have that opportunity as well as to ask questions of them. And I go to Director Nicholson next.
Yes, I think, given Director Segal's comments about water and sewer, I think that's really important and relates very closely to the densities, and there's no information really on proposed densities and uses, so I think that needs to be worked out before we go for much farther. And then my other question is about, has there been a community information meeting? Has the community had an opportunity to?
Through the
Mr.
chair,
Buchan.
the applicant has led a preliminary community engagements meeting. That's not one that staff attended. There could be a request for additional meetings later on through this process.
Okay, well, maybe I'll have a question for the applicant when they.
Great. So are there any further questions for staff at this time? Director Martman.
I was just wondering about the lake bottom and about if you have any comments from a CVRD perspective about the ownership of that.
Mr. Buchan.
Through the chair, I don't have comments about that at this time, but if there's a desire for information, I can bring that forward in the next report.
Yeah, I think it's, right now it's owned by Mosaic probably, and trying to understand the ownership of the lake bottom I think is important.
So just for my clarification with the chair, what specific information would be useful there?
That if the applicant is, if that is part of the package, if they're looking to do that, and for what purpose.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Buchan. Don't go too far. And I'd like to invite the applicants up now. Keep in mind, everyone, they did provide us with a fairly lengthy presentation, which would probably have taken up a fair chunk of their speaking time. So I think Mr. Holland has decided that he will speak to us instead of showing us slides at this point. So with that, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be back here with you. I'm here on behalf of Easter Seals. With us is the CEO of Easter Seals, Lisa Beck, and a longstanding champion and board member and one of the most inspiring people I've met in recent life, Marco Pasqua, a board member and just an amazing person. We thought we had a longer presentation here today. We were informed yesterday we had 5 minutes, so I'll keep this quite short and then we can go to questions. Easter Seals has been providing services to BC communities for over 75 years. In fact, the BC Transit Handy Dart system that we all know and love, that was started by Easter Seals and ultimately taken over by BC Transit. They have over 50 years of working with 3 different camps in BC, providing services largely to those with disabilities, youth, children, and some adults. The demand for that services continue to grow and the facilities continue to age. Camp Shawnigan has been in play for about 40 years. It was purchased from previous schools and entities. The buildings are far past their best buy date to a level where it's not worth renovate them. They're still safe to use, but they don't really have a future. And so Easter Seals has commenced on a multi-year project to raise funds and do a design and replace the existing facilities. The phase 1, the majority of this whole purpose for the discussion in front of you is merely to replace the existing facilities with new buildings. The new vision is to the question around the future. There's been the words resort and others have been bandied about here. Currently, the facility runs on a 3-month of the year charitable business model. And I think with new facilities, you can immediately see that's not going to be possible to move forward. So we would end up losing that opportunity. So the focus that Easter Seals has been on is to find a nonprofit, community service-based approach to build a business model that will replace the existing facilities and allow them to operate and provide services to the disability community as well as to the CVRD community going forward on a 12-month of the year basis. So the current buildings keep exactly the same capacity for water, for sewer, et cetera, and any future development in the uplands or any other area would be subject to additional water and sewer facilities. And if we are permitted to be part of the GCB, they would be prepared to bring some significant investment to helping support the CVRD water and sewer system. The new vision includes retaining the existing gymnasium and possibly putting in a daycare, Currently, all the housing for the counselors and the campers is in a cinder block dormitory, which is an interesting building. We'd like to move that to modern cabins with updated accessibility standards. It's kind of interesting that we managed to make do with the buildings that we have with, one of the premier accessibility service providers in the area. So we're going to move to a Rick Hansen gold standard, and we've done additional research on some of the new neural challenges, such as being on the spectrum, and how to provide the most supportive environment we possibly can, and our goal is to be a world-class destination for that. We would have a major social hub in a new dining facility with an industrial kitchen that overlooks the lake, which would be available to the whole community when it's not serving the campers. The landscape design is going to be one of the most interesting. We have one of the leading disability landscape design teams out of Vancouver working with us with some really exciting play equipment for the kids, experiences they can't normally get, including an upgraded dock with lifts that can bring kids out of wheelchairs into boats, which they otherwise would never get a chance to do, and a much safer configuration off Shawnigan Lake Road, including a safe crossing. So this is the proposal for essentially where we're headed for here right now. The application covers all 15 acres, not just the 5 acres that are fronting the water. Currently, there's a mix of land designations and zoning and kind of a hodgepodge. Really what we're looking forward to is to bring all of that under one designation and one zone. So it's a coherent, consistent whole. This was asked for by the CVRD to address any future concerns and keep this all under one integrated decision-making process. We're looking forward to the uses of it was mentioned in terms of housing was raised by staff with regarding to the future use. We have a very difficult time finding workforce housing for the camps in the summertime and any other uses. The intent of the upper lands in the future would be mostly institutional uses, fully consistent with the current camp. So we actually just came from lunch with the Malahat, where we're talking about working with the First Nations Health Authority to find additional facilities for them up there. So this is not intended to be a profit-making residential agenda. There's not enough water to make any money worth pursuing up there, so we're looking primarily to turn this into a 12-month of the year CVRD community service hub that would offer these camps in the summertime with an extra special focus for all of the programming on the community with disabilities. All the technical work has been complete. Archaeology, water, our water license has been approved by the province for 2 years, subject to a review, pending a CVRD regional system in place. Other than that, we presume they would continue to let the water proceed. Our fundraising is we have stormwater plans, environmental plans, designs are underway. We held a public meeting and have had quite a bit of interaction with the community. Fundraising, we have had $7 million from the province provided already, and twice that is being currently sought from the federal government, with the remainder being from private donations, which continue to come in. So we would ask that the committee be open to moving this forward to receive further feedback, and Lisa and Marco and myself are here to answer any questions if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland, and I'm going to look to committee who wants on the list. We'll get the list established first, and anyone else, Nichols? Writing as fast as I can. All right, Director Acton, questions for the applicant?
Sure, thank you.
Oh, and just before you just before you start, there has been a package that we'd probably still be looking at if Mr. Holland would have introduced it. So can we make sure that if it hasn't been, that it's made available to all the directors?
It is.
We all got it? Everybody got this? Okay, great. Director Acton.
Wondering if you can paint a picture of how it looks different in the summer versus the winter, because does the dining hall become a restaurant for the winter? Like, how do the uses switch? And are you still going with the theme of a camp? Because 10 cabins are not a traditional camp anymore. Usually, you have 6 or 8 per room, dormitory style. So I guess just how will it flip over from a camp in the summer and then not a camp? And then, but there is a lot, and there also is a lot of housing, workforce housing type language mentioned, that I would hate to see people having to couch surf during the summer because now they have nowhere to live, which does happen at the resort?
Mr. Holland.
Thank you, through the chair. Great questions. Camp summer versus winter, this has been an ongoing discussion. When we started the project, we spent a couple of months talking to a whole range of groups, Ministry of Health, a bunch of other ministries, Health Authority. First, we touched on the First Nations Health Authority and a whole host of groups and schools that might be interested in using the facility. So in the summertime, it would continue as you see now. So we would have probably about 100 people on site, of which about half or a little bit less are campers. We have a very high counselor to camp ratio because of the kids with disabilities need a lot of extra support. So the staff housing right there now is mixed in this 1940s, 1950s cinder block box. The cabins are designed to handle multiple campers plus 2 or 3 counselors that would look after them during the summer camp events. During the wintertime, we see them being used by, say, a family with a member or 2 of disabilities that would like to get away. Right now, there's really nothing for them to be able to do something like that. The facilities, so the food services is not currently seen to be operating like a restaurant. It'll have an industrial kitchen, so maybe there's a catering possibility that someone might want to use that rather than leave it, dormant much of the time. We don't know what sort of the demand for these facilities in your community will actually be. It's hard to predict exactly what that would be. The nearest facility like it is probably Tainamara Resort in terms of contemporary sort of cabins that can host a few people for a getaway or a retreat or an event of some kind. So we expect there would be day use of those facilities and maybe some multi-night or one-night kind of uses. Obviously, Easter Seals, as the charitable organization running it, dedicated to supporting the disability community, that would be the primary driver. We talked with quite a few schools. So St. John's, as you know, is always bursting at the seams. They're very interested and are working with us to use the gym. The pool is an exterior summer pool. If we had that under a cover somehow, they would love to have that for their students. They have a challenge housing staff. They're in the opposite season to our camp, so maybe some of our staff housing can support them or even some of their boarding students. So we don't know exactly how that's going to work out, but clearly the entire focus is here to serve the community as a community service hub and make those facilities available. So that's sort of the summer versus winter. You'll still have people on it. The schools, we talked to quite a few schools, particularly some in the CRD, St. Michael's and many of the others. They often come up to do community projects here in the CVRD. So they will bring their students up and find a place for them to stay, and then they'll take on a 2-3 day, week-long project to maybe rehabilitate a stream or do something like that. They were very excited to have a place that they could come that would have a waterfront facility that would be at the base of a mountain so they can go climb the mountain, that they can also be part of community. So there was quite a lot of interest, as well as a lot of 1 day, 2 day uses. There's many disability service groups here on the island that really have very few facilities that support a disability community when they go out to do a day trip or something like that. So they were very excited to have this available. So that's the list, and I have a list of some of those in the handout. We didn't have time to go through those, but those are there. So summer versus winter, you're gonna have a lot of the same folks, fewer children, more older folks, but that's kind of generally what we're looking to do. In terms of the restaurant, yeah, it's not intended to be run as a restaurant. Obviously, if that was, this is not intended to be a resort, as in a market resort out there competing in the private sector for all of these things. That's not what it's being designed to do. The workforce housing is an issue. We have our summer housing, and if this is providing services to the community longer term, we will have staff that would need a place to stay, and right now there's sort of one caretaker's house. So we see that as being something else that we can use, and also maybe a partnership with St. John's as well, because they're limited as well in their space. Yeah, I think that sort of covered some of the questions. If I missed anything, let me know. Thank you.
Put you back on the list for round 2. Director Nicholson.
Thanks. I am wondering, when you had your community information meeting, what did you hear from the community, and how was that incorporated in the plan?
Thank you. Through the chair. It was a great meeting. We had the pleasure of working with Netta Bose, a local community engagement person, to really help us get connected. So that was it. We quite enjoyed the conversations we had. Support for the project was very wide, pretty much across the board for moving it forward. And I think as Director Acton said, Easter Seals is a positive part of the community, and we didn't want to see it go away. There were questions around the water supply. So the water license has has been approved by the province for 2 years, subject to coming back for a review pending, we don't know whether they'll renew it for another 2 years, or give us a permanent license. Certainly our intent long-term, I think we all believe in the regional solution to water, so that would be one of those solutions that we'd like to see. If that ever got hooked up and we could hook up to it, then obviously the water license would be relinquished immediately to the CVRD. We don't want to overdraw the lake. That was one. The septic system was another, so we put almost $1 million into the ground in the last 2 years to meet all the requirements. So that's all been approved and signed off of by the province and the health authority, so that was another question. Questions about what would be available in the off-season, kind of what the plan was for, so that's what I've covered there. With respect to heritage, folks have mentioned the importance of this site over history on the site. 2 things have been identified specifically, the lion, the concrete lion, and the water tower. So the water tower is condemned at the moment. It's all board. No one's allowed to go anywhere near it. It's starting to not be stable. Just as a charitable organization, delivering services, extra monies to restore something like that is not on the books. But the alternative is to dismantle it, deconstruct it, and reuse it as much as we can in the play structures on the site, including maybe creating a smaller replica of it to remember that process was sort of one of the ideas, but we're looking for other ideas of where we could do that. Some folks have expressed interest. I told them that if they could get there and take it down and reuse it, we'll give them the key the next day if they want to do that, but we think there's a chance to keep some of this in the project itself, because it's been an icon from the lake, where the summer activity lives here on the lake. It's been an icon from the lake for a long time. So those 2 have been identified. The lion has a deep heritage, a deep sort of historical story that many are quite intrigued with. It's a great story, and I'm sure Director Acton could. There are definitely some interesting stories from history here. It's not in good shape. The concrete is all flaking off. The challenge we have is that the counselors spend much of the summer trying to keep the kids off it, because it's not safe. It's a giant piece of concrete on top of a rock next to rock. So we run into that challenge right now, and so the discussion has been, can we lift it off and remove it and put it somewhere else? What can we do with this? And it's definitely a point of discussion in this process, and I think Director Acton's comments raised that. So those were some of the key things we heard from the public meeting. Forgive my brain, did I forget anything that stood out? That was mostly it.
Can I just follow up a little bit?
Yes.
I am really interested in when I was a kid, we would occasionally be invited to people who had cabins on Shawnigan Lake. And there was a real feel to the old Shawnigan Lake, and it seems to me that this place offers an opportunity to try and hang on to that in how you design the buildings and so forth. So I'm wondering if any thoughts being done in that kind of heritage way.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, currently there are no design guidelines for this area, so the architects that started working on this a number of years ago took a contemporary kind of approach that's been very well received by the funding community that puts money forward to this. It has been raised in a few areas. They have noted that they're quite open to having a conversation about some of that to see if there is some minor changes that could be made to them. They are very definitely contemporary modern buildings, which is a bit of a different feel than the lake is evolving. It has a lot of contemporary buildings and a lot of older buildings, and it depends on which group you talk to as to how they feel about it. So thank you for that.
Director Segal next.
Thank you. I've 2 questions. One is just wondering if there are any other Easter Seals camps on the island or other service providers that provide camps for kids with disabilities. And my other question is regarding, you mentioned the community service and CVRD, and for sure we see with rec centers not having enough space for Pro D camps and spring break camps. So is like a use agreement with the CVRD something you'd be looking into?
Thank you. Through the chair, to your last question, absolutely. This is exactly what this camp here is for, and is exactly what we have in mind, is that this is a facility for the community. It's not a private resort. This is all paid for with charitable dollars, public dollars. It's for the community use. So those kinds of examples, that's a really good example. With respect to other camps, there's no other Easter Seals camp on the island. There's only 3 of them in the province, one in Squamish, one up near Kelowna and Winfield, and one here. So those are those. Power to Be, I believe, in the CRD. but it's not an overnight, it's just a day camp. Where there aren't any others, I believe, are there? No. So those are the two. This is the one sort of full-service camp for these kids that allows them to get away for a multi-day experience looked after by highly trained counselors and stewards. Thank you.
Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mark. Please don't take this the wrong way, much as I enjoy hearing you speak. Would it be possible to hear from your colleague from a user point of view, what they would think of what's going ahead here? And I put that as nice as
Director Wilson, that's generally a question that you pose to the chair of the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do apologise.
Let's take care of the rest of the business of the committee, and then we can perhaps hear from the other members of the group. Do you have a question for Mr. Holland?
Not you're right now.
Okay, thank you. Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I heard it was show and tell day, so I just wanted to bring this out. In 2010, I was the second place fundraiser for the small business division for the Easter Seals of the 24-hour relay.
Nice.
Really, there may have only been 2 small businesses, but so big fan of what you guys do. So I wanted to start with that because I did the 24-hour relay a few times and big supporter of what you guys do. So, but I do have, I think, some tough questions. One thing that I've been told is, you zone a property, you don't necessarily zone for the people who are there. And so the ask is pretty big, changing the official community plan, I'll get to my question, it's coming quick. My wife and I, after we got married, instead of going to Hawaii, we rented a house on the lake for 2 months, and so really got to experience the full Shawnigan Lake experience. It's a real jewel of the couch, and so I think some of these changes, I think consulting with the community is going to be important. I think my sense is the community likes things being a little bit understated, and so there's a lot there. So kind of the 2 questions, I think the one around taxes is already answered, so there's that one maybe you could address, but then the other part with such a big ask, I would have expected to see significant amenities included for the community, specifically access to the lake, and especially as the lake becomes more developed. I have a pretty tough time supporting any sort of major OCP change without giving the community dedicated, access to the lake that's just for the folks that live in Shawnigan. So those are the few things, and so I'll maybe let you sort of address those 2 things, and I'll leave it there.
Mr. Holland, you got 2 questions.
Okay, thank you through the chair. Thank you for your support. That's fantastic. That's excellent. Yes, the understated sort of character, that goes back to the sort of the design character of that. Thank you for letting us know how you feel about that. That's certainly been on the discussion as we go, so we'll take that back. With respect to taxes, they're a charitable foundation and live on charitable donations and 24-hour relays and things like that. So with respect to the taxes, federally they're a charitable organization. In terms of property taxes, that would be up to the regional district as to whether it wanted to charge them taxes or not, or for what purposes of it. There's no profit made out of this. The purpose of the 12-month-a-year business model is to extend their mandate to serve the disability community and the communities where they live, because their other camps are also used by schools in the areas, et cetera. So they don't make any profits out of it. So any additional costs in that dynamic would need to come out of that charitable source and the users to come back to them. With respect to public access to the lake, it has come up in the discussions in the past. The real challenge we have is liability. Essentially, certainly during the summertime, which is when folks who want to be there, we have a whole lot of kids there and counselors, and going to the lake to enjoy, going down there to just watch the sunset or something is one thing. Going down there to party at 2 o'clock in the morning is something else. And with public easements and public right-of-ways, we end up with a control system. We talk to the neighbors. There is a public right-of-way access just south of us that has not been actioned by the CBRD because they don't want to have to police it. So that becomes becomes the challenge here that Easter Seals faces in getting people to the water requires all of that extra maintenance and the liability that would then go on to the charitable foundation. So they, what we're trying to do is to open it up to the community through uses and rental of the facility to get down there to use it for events and things like that would be how we would hope to have the community down there, as opposed to turning it into kind of a public beach access or something as well. The waterfront as well is a sensitive area, and all of the changes that this is proposing, the new dock, et cetera, has no new impact on that waterfront. The riparian controls and the Parks Department and the Environmental Review Group with CVRD have been very, very cautious about that, because any kind of higher use area can very quickly destroy riparian territory. So any changes we're making have no new impact within the footprint there. So that would be the other question of where they would go when they came down. So at the moment, we're not proposing public easements, et cetera, down there for those reasons. But it doesn't mean that we don't fully acknowledge that the community access to water is absolutely important. So it's kind of through the use of the facilities where the liability is transferred to someone who's organizing that use that we would see that occurring right now at the moment. In terms of the OCP amendments, about 95% of what the current parks and institutional use is for zoning and the OCP is exactly what the new zone was intended to propose. The institutional designation doesn't include workforce housing, and we've asked strategic initiatives to consider that so that we don't have to have a whole nother designation that would then provide for the housing, because the institution and the housing are intended to be married, but that's not been worked out in any level of detail at this stage of the application process. The zoning is, again, very, very close to the other existing uses that are allowed. Your park's institutional use has a very broad list of activities that can go on it. A lot of what's proposed could actually proceed under the current zoning. It was just the CVRD asked us to get all 15 acres together into one unit. Otherwise, there's two parcels on the waterfront, one that's about 85% and then a little tiny strip that has a relic of a single family zone. That's the only kind of real change that would be needed to do everything that's proposed. So it looks like a big ask. The actual changes are very minor.
Additional questions, Director McClinton?
Thank you. I left my mic on. I'm going to respectfully disagree. I mean, I think that, and this is preliminary, and so I know there's going to be things coming back, but I mean, this is going to change the feel of the community without question. And so we can call it what we want, but, so it's, whatever rules are being changed or aren't changing, this is going to have an impact on the feel of the community. I'm going to follow up with staff about the water access, just as a person. I know in my area, anytime there's a development, the first thing we're looking for is beach access. I'm certainly not as familiar with the riparian area there, but, as the Shawnigan Lake is built up and there's more families that are not living on the lake and they're looking for that access to spend time near the water. I mean, that's one of the reasons you go there. So, but I'll follow up with staff about that and see if I can learn a little bit more. Thank you for your time and your answering the questions.
Thank you.
Going to go to those directors that haven't asked any questions yet. So Director Martman, please proceed.
Thank you. I was just wondering if there's any plans with greenhouses and community gardens opportunities. Is that something that is built into this plan as well?
Thank you, through the chair. We've included that kind of food use in the zoning list, although much of it's included in most zones, but with the recognition that there may be at some point some value to having kind of a gardening component to the camper's experience that might, depending on the chef, it would depend largely on the chef that would be in the kitchen in a given year that wanted to kind of grow and use that in the process. So rather than requiring a rezoning or anything for that, we asked that it be included. It's not planned into the plan at the moment because they're a very high maintenance activity and someone needs to run it. It's not something that a typical camp counselor that's working with students that are children with disabilities would then go and start gardening. It's a skill. So we wanted to not close the door on it, but right now it's not designed into the plan, but the opportunity is there for sure.
Follow up?
And I was just looking at the tower, and I know that you're saying this is condemned, but there are aspects to places of importance, and sometimes the value of those is worth the input of really taking a look at it and saying, this could be a draw, not a detriment to the place. Because I think those kind of things, and maybe, you know, finding a way to, I can know you're looking at maybe repurposing pieces of it, but I think of every time I drive by the Discovery Center in Duncan, and you look at that platform that they use for fire lookouts, it's a draw. I mean, it's, you know, it can be a selling feature rather than a, you know, something that you say, we're just throwing money at it. So just a comment, thank you.
Thank you.
Look to Director Decker. Abbott, would you like to chime in at this point? Okay, thank you. So before I go back to Director Acton, I think that we're nearing a place where we can probably start to look at a resolution. I think I'll get Mr. Buchan back up here in a few minutes, but I'll go to Director Acton first for any further questions, and please proceed.
I'm going to be quick about the lion. I hope I can tell it in a really cute way because the story is, there's a lot of history there. So going back several owners, there was Judge Hunter, and he owned that land and other pieces, and he bought one of the pieces for $1. But anyway, that's not part of the story. He was all about integrity, and he was a judge in Victoria at the legislature, and he decided, or at the courts of appeal, and he was really upset about legislation that he felt was discriminatory, and he got a local carver who was actually quite successful, or you know, at the time, a really good carver, and he carved the lion, and he put the butt facing the legislature because he felt like they had lost their integrity. And then it changed hands, and it became a prep school, Cliffside Prep School, and they used it as their symbol. And then, oddly enough, the Lions Club became part of this. And so it's really important to the Lions Club as well, and to the Lions Club of Vancouver Island. So for sure, that lion, we need to find a way to preserve it, and we can't just brush it off. And again, with the water tower, if we lose all these elements that are a part of our history, what do we look like? And the design, that's what a rezoning is for. The modern look design is not in keeping with Shawnigan. Shawnigan has this feel. It has a smell. You talk about sensory, you smell the cedar when you drive off the highway. It's heavily forested. We want to keep our trees. Baldy Mountain is a huge asset. And the three major things that the community said in your community engagement was access to Old Baldy. That is heart of our community. The lion, and the design was ill-fitting. And because I sat there for an hour and spoke with people too and listened to what they had to say. So I guess, you know, I would question, has the original plan been changed from your community engagement? And I see it hasn't. So I don't need to ask that question. So we need to find a way to make this vision work so that from the water, it looks like Shawnigan. It's not a, you know, too bad Shawnigan's fading away. And we don't want that. We want to reward the people who keep that heritage and keep that look and value the community's history. We have, like I said, Kinsale Trestle, Shawnigan Station, the first stake. It's really important to us to keep those items. And yeah, so that is the kind of information that I think we need to collect. A heritage plan moving forward before we send it off to referrals, and a design plan so that we understand what is it going to look like. And our community spent, you know, we can, no, I won't say this. We have spent almost $100,000 in our community designing the look in our village that we want. It hasn't changed. We want the whole community to look like that. So it's cabins, it's wood, it's trim, it's certain old colors. So we want to preserve that as much as possible, and that is something we can do in a rezoning. And the third thing that came to mind, well, I lost my spot here. Anyway, Oh,
Well,
I have, I'll stop there. Those two things are the most important to us at this time. And we will, I think the APC will be really want to understand the light pollution, so that's another thing. It's the way that we live, and it's the way that we live in the winter. It's dark, and we like it like that.
So, Mr. Holland, if there's remarks in regards to Director Acton's comments and questions, that would be great. I would also ask you to maybe look towards wrapping up with some final remarks so that we can get to the business here and perhaps entertain Director Wilson's request. So, please.
Thank you, through your chair. Thank you, Director Acton. This is very helpful to hear the priorities when we went to the community. I'm sorry, I didn't have the notes and I forgot what those top lists are. The access to Mount Baldy, we talked to the CBRD parks and they don't want any access there. We were prepared to offer a right-of-way, but it would require parking along the road and things like that. So at this time, that wasn't being pursued until a future rail parks and trail system in the uplands might be able to be secured. Thank you very much for the direction on the Lion and the tower and the design. The Shawnigan Village Design Guidelines, yes, we're definitely familiar with those, and thank you for that direction. We'll take that back. On lights, yes, we're not to a level of detail where we're actually designing the lighting fixtures on the buildings to be able to say that, but we certainly were committed to a dark skies design for the lighting, which keeps all the lighting going down, so the only light that escapes would be from really inside the buildings themselves. But otherwise, I just wanted to say thank you for all the direction and all the questions. It's very helpful for us because we've been at this for a while and we needed to resolve the infrastructure before we came and asked for any time from the community to know that we were secure with water and sanitary and those issues. Now that we've secured those, so we're coming out now to start this discussion and we're very grateful for the direction. We'll take this back and work together as a team and see what we can do to address these issues. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Don't go anywhere. She's got her thought back. And I'm really glad that Director Acton's just shared the story about the lion, because the thing that was stuck in my head was you had a flaky lion on your hands. So please proceed.
No, it's a lion with integrity. The other thing is just understanding the uses.
Okay.
And staff does point out that that's really vague. So understanding the uses on both sides of the property. So that I think to this committee, it would be great to have that information so then we could progress with our referrals. I would like to have a motion to refer it back to staff at some point.
Work with me. Thank you for that, Mr. Holland. I hope I've got your name right. Mr. Pasqua, would you like to come forward and address committee for a moment or two, and we'll get to our business.
Would I be able to just maybe use
Please
this
do.
microphone here so
Yes.
that I can be seen?
Actually, take two chairs away, Director Wilson, and then you can get one to pull forward.
That's okay. I think I can be heard. Awesome. So for anyone who can't see me online, it's because I'm a wheelchair user and I don't have a laptop with a camera in front of me. So I appreciate you just listening to my voice. Hopefully it's soothing for you. So my name is Marco.
Can you tilt the mic around just to point down? Perfect.
There we go.
Thank you.
So my name is Marco Pasqua, and I'm a former camp alumni turned accessibility consultant and inspirational speaker. It's hard for me to underscore in a few moments the impact that Easter Seal Camp has had on my life. Believe it or not, I'm pushing close to 40, and I've been involved with Easter Seals Camp since I was about 7 years old. This organization has made such a profound impact on my life in every single aspect. Again, I can't even describe it. From going to the camps as a little boy and giving my parents respite from the many hospital visits that I used to have. I was born with cerebral palsy. I've endured over 13 surgeries from birth, which was very taxing on my parents, both emotionally and physically. And Easter Seals Camps was the one place where I could go and not feel like I was a burden on myself or that my disability was holding me back. It was the one place where I could feel like I was free to be a child like anyone else. But most importantly for me, it actually gave me the confidence to actually learn social skills and be around people who could teach me things beyond my own knowledge. And I actually attribute those days, those early days, is the reason why today I'm an inspirational speaker, but also an accessibility consultant. Flash forward 30 years from my involvement in camp as a camper, I'm actually a member of the board of directors at Easter Seals, helping to steer where we're going and the vision of where we're going for children in the future so that they can have similar experiences that I've had. But in addition to this, specifically to this project, I was actually the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee that was building out what we're calling the Meaningful Access Blueprint for how this space at Shawnigan would actually be designed. Not only as somebody with lived experience, but somebody with professional experience, as I'm a designated Rick Hansen Foundation certified professional, meaning I know how to work with architects to understand what universal design and accessibility principles mean in practice. So the vision that we have for this camp is not to change the impact we've already been creating for years on end. It's actually to expand that. And respectfully, we do want to pay respect to the lands that are already here and not change those experiences, but rather have more children have the opportunity to access those spaces in ways that they never could before. So in looking at our cabins in the way that they're designed for individuals who may be on the spectrum or neurodiverse, to actually having traversable pathways for somebody like myself who uses a wheelchair and doesn't actually then have disdain for the outdoors because I can actually move. So we've talked to a lot of our advisory committee members who are in the accessibility space, one of which being the Director of Accessibility and Inclusion at the Rick Hansen Foundation himself is a member. And he said he was so blown away by these plans, he hasn't seen anything like this in the world that allows for children with disabilities to experience camps as almost like a living lab as sorts, and give them that type of access and freedom that he hasn't been able to experience anywhere himself. So for him, he says that although he's nearing retirement himself, sites like this give him hope that there are going to be families, children, and communities that are going to really understand what universal design and accessibility really means. So I guess I'll really end it at that because we've already taken up a great deal of your time. But if you are interested at all with what it is that we're working on here, we have set up a website, campshawnigan.ca. And on that website, I believe our Meaningful Access Blueprint, all in terms of the guidelines that we've been following for the Rick Hansen program, has been listed out on the Camp Shawnigan website. But I'm also open and available to answer any questions either today or after today's date about anything that we were working on as an advisory committee. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, work with me, folks. This is what I'm going to suggest that we do. Mr. Buchan, would you please rejoin us at the microphone? We've had a great deal of information shared, and at this point, I've made a number of notes, and I've heard Director Acton say that she would like to refer this to staff for contemplation, a lot of what you've heard. I've written a list of things. Well, I'm actually going to go through them. There's the amenities were raised, connection with the CBRD's Disability Committee, gardens, lighting, form and character, water, sewer, the need for a public information meeting where staff are in attendance, when and how and what material gets to the APC and the Parks Committee, and I'm going to throw mine in there too. I think that perhaps an official committee site tour might be appropriate. Would require staff resources and the applicants. So these are a number of broad things that I've got the list if staff want it. I look to staff and perhaps Ms. Chirulf and ask the way that we can proceed with, and I was just handed a note, option 2 in the staff report. Based on what you've heard, Mr. Buchan, what do you need from us that will meet the needs not only of the committee but the director for the area? Is that, would option 2 in the staff report be helpful?
Through the chair, yes, option 2 would be helpful. I think we've heard that there's a desire to see some further refinement and clarity of the proposed uses and densities, not just residential, but the tourist accommodation dormitory. As well as on page 7, I think there's been some questions around water and sewer and potentially looking at some of the design components and how that relates to the the Shawnigan Design Charrette.
Thank you. I turn to Director Segal.
I'm just wondering through to staff if both these external referrals can go out and you can be working on bringing that information at the same time rather than delaying.
Yeah, through the chair, the list of referrals could go out with that additional information coming in preparation for the APC and PAC.
Then we would need an appropriate resolution that captures both the referral and the working with staff, and I don't know what the exact wording. Well, that's where I was going. Thank you. 5-minute recess. You're reading it out. I'm not going into my emails now. Oh, maybe turn my camera on. Welcome back, everyone, from that brief recess. I understand a resolution has been distributed, and I turn to Ms. Harrison. Give us what you got.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that application RZ 24B01, Easter Seals, be referred to the following external agencies: Malahat Nation, Sawut First Nation, Ministry of Forests, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, BC Hydro, Island Health, BIHA, RCMP, Shawnigan Lake, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Shawnigan Village Waterworks, Cowichan Tribes, Tamuk, thank you, Treaty Association, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, Water Authorizations, BC Transit, Cowichan Valley School District, SD 79, Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, and Shawnigan Lake Volunteer Fire Department, and that the preliminary staff report for application number RZ 24B01 Easter Seals be referred back to staff for the following information prior to further consideration and advancing to the PAC and APC. For additional details on heritage plan for the subject properties, further clarity on the proposed uses and densities, and a design plan that references the 2020 Shawnigan Lake Design Charrette.
Moved by the director for the area, seconded by Director Segal. Director Acton.
Just a question on the referrals. I'm curious as to why we would send it to the Tamuk Treaty Association, just to understand that.
Through the chair, there's a provincial map that we highlight that speaks to traditional territories, and it gives us the contacts for nations that may have an interest.
Oh, so just to make sure you haven't missed anybody?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a provincial map that tells us
Okay.
the key
Thank you.
contacts.
Director Nicholson.
My question is, if you go ahead with the referrals before you've got clarification on the uses and densities, will the referral agencies be working from sort of the same sheet that we will be?
Mr. Buchan.
Through the chair, it would be a broader referral, so we would get broader comments back. If we had a more specific referral, then we'd get specific comments back. But it's still get comments back that we can use, and that might trigger for more information.
Director Nicholson.
So in your estimation, are any of these referral agencies ones that we would like more detailed comments back?
Mr. Buchan.
Through the chair, I think it's appropriate at this time to get the initial feedback from those agencies. Depending on their feedback, we may seek additional information when there's further clarity.
Before I go to Director Segal, and this is, we're sort of establishing our style of how we do things here, and we want to make sure that all of our bases are covered. But I just want to highlight the fact that we run the risk of slowing down the process, perhaps unnecessarily, with too much in the way of specificity. I think our staff have done an excellent job in presenting this preliminary vision. And there were a couple of things that I had on my list that I'd like to see be considered at this point, but we have a resolution on the floor which is sufficient to move things forward. I will bring something up after the fact. I don't want to start amending it. So with that, I'll turn to Director Segal to close.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to speak in support of the motion. And just to bring some awareness, there was a lot of conversation around community around this table. And just to be clear that this serves the disability community. And those of us at this table are a part of the able-bodied community who have just think I've never encountered a playground I couldn't work with, a mountain I couldn't climb, a podium I couldn't speak at. And we need more spaces that serve the disability community because general community doesn't always serve them. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. That resolution will go to the next board. We ask that you proceed forthwith. And I just want to really quickly raise the question with committee. Is there a desire for a official committee site tour? Turn to the director for the area.
I think a tour is great, and I think a tour for the APC would be really valuable too. And so maybe when we see the application come back, that's when we could ask for a site tour, so that when it's because it's going to come back before it goes to Parks and the APC. Oh no, I guess it would be nice to go before that. Anyway,
So
site tour would be great.
I don't want to mix ABC because we're wanting their separate direction and advice. So would someone be interested in making a motion to ask staff to work with the applicant to arrange a site tour with staff with the applicant? Do you have a resolution in that fancy thing in front of you for a site tour? Yeah, agreed. It would constitute a meeting. Everybody's aware of that? When we all gather, we constitute a meeting, so we have to, yeah. So, did I see you make a resolution? Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? We can discuss the rules of a meeting in advance of a site tour meeting. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Does that dispense with this particular item? It does. Thank you very much for attending today. Ms. Harrison, next item.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The next item is item R3, which is a report from Development Services Division regarding application number RZ20E01 for 5237 Cooks Isle Road, PID 001169874.
Welcome, Ms. DeBenna.
Thank you, Chair. Should I wait for the slides? Okay, I'll wait. Just jumping ahead here. So this application before you proposes to rezone the subject property to a new site-specific zone that would permit a proposed density of 50 units per hectare. The applicant has provided a conceptual plan for a 44-unit market rental residential building with a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. So just really high level here, market rental housing in this context is purpose-built and rentals at market rates, which are set by the private market, not to be confused with affordable or low or below market housing. The property is within the City of Duncan Eagle Heights Water Service Area and the CBRD Eagle Heights Sewer Service Area. The current zoning is the highest, or allows for the highest density in Area E, which is 30 units per hectare. The current designation, village residential, supports ground-oriented multi-unit residential housing, and there's no current density range in the OCP or the local area plan for Area E. Staff have noted in the staff report that the modernized OCP, while in draft form, does provide a density range of 25 to 50 units per hectare and includes this property within the growth containment boundary. The Eagle Heights neighborhood, which is the surrounding area, has been identified as an area suitable for intensification of uses. However, in the local area plan, it indicates that a comprehensive neighborhood plan should be developed to identify appropriate locations for intensification. An OCP amendment will be a part of this application to include the property within DPA 10, Development Permit Area 10, multifamily residential development, as well as Development Permit Area 13, which is the energy and water conservation and greenhouse gas emissions development permit area. Staff have included a review within the staff report of various guidelines in Development Permit Area 10, which is a form and character development permit area, which would be considered at the time of development permit application. As well, it's noted that that staff would recommend a submission of a stormwater management plan detailing how drainage will be addressed on site so as not to further impact the Busy Place Creek watershed, which flows into the Coxsackie River. Development Permit Area 13 does include drainage guidelines as well. And this application was submitted prior to the current referrals policy and was forwarded to external agencies and First Nations before coming toward the board. However, since the application has been revised significantly and the referral responses are outdated and potentially under previous legislation or regulations, staff have recommended that the application proceed to referrals prior to further consideration, and have listed recommended agencies and First Nations. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. Look to committee for questions to staff. Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. This has elicited a bit of public input in written format, and one caught my attention. Mr. Colson talks about walking through bedrooms, walking through washrooms to get to bedroom space. And then I was just looking at the floor plan. There doesn't, in light of the previous presenters, it looks like stair access is the only way to get up and down. So it doesn't seem to be as accessible as I would have thought buildings in this day and age should meet. Any observations?
Thank you for the question, through the chair to Director Abbott. I think that is probably a question more for the applicants. I have spoken to the chief building officer about access through bathrooms to the bedroom, and that isn't something that's not permitted. And obviously a building would be considered at the building permit stage to make sure it's appropriate and meets the building code. However, This is a conceptual plan, and I believe it's not a finalized plan, keeping that in mind. But yeah, hopefully that's probably a question for the applicant.
Would you like to reserve that question for the applicant? And Ms. Pressman is jumping in.
Through the chair to Director Abbott, I just want to point out, there is an elevator shown in the plans.
I apologize. Thank you.
Thanks.
Does that conclude your questions? Director Acton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said that the density request was more than the OCP allowable density, but how about compared to the MOCP?
Right, thank you. So through the chair to Director Acton. So the current OCP does not include density ranges for the designations, but the draft MOCP for village residential provides a range of 25 units to 50. So they're asking for 50. The current zoning allows for 30 units per hectare. So it's an increase of 20 per hectare.
Director Martman?
Thank you, and I'm trying to wrap my head around this development and some of the things coming down through legislation. And I don't know, is there any relevance with Bill 44 to this? And especially within the 800 meters, is there anything there? And public hearings, all those kind of things.
Through the chair to Director Martman. Okay, so for the Bill 44, the secondary suites specifically, is that what you're asking? Or
Ms. Pressman, please join in.
Through the chair to Director Martman, I think you might be referring to the transit oriented development under Bill 44, and that also doesn't apply. Yeah.
You had more questions and I've already forgotten them. I apologize.
I think the other one was public hearing.
Right. Okay, so the public hearing requirements, I think there's 4 requirements. So you must have OCP, which we do. It must be consistent with the OCP. So that's, I would say, subjective, arguable. In this case, it is, they are requesting for residential. So that would meet that requirement under the Local Government Act. And the 4th one, perhaps someone with the internet, because I've already drawn a blank. It's 467 or 463. Right, okay, there you go, thank you. So they would need to go through a public hearing in this one because it's of the OCP amendment, thank you, thank you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you because I think, there's interest in the community from this. We heard it at question, or public hearing and our public meeting. Input, public, thank you. And I think just knowing that they have that process will go to that is important.
Can I add to that? Yeah, so I did see the correspondence and did listen to the public input, and the applicant did hold public consultation, but it was in 2020, I want to say, and for the previous, like the original application. Since this application has never been presented to committee or to the board, there would have been no public consultation from the CBRD. We will, if it proceeds, be posting more information about it on the Plander Cowichan website as well. So just wanted to point that out. Yeah.
Before I go to Director McClinton, there's a question that's bothering me in that we are clearly in a time and place where there's huge demand for housing. And yet, we've heard from community that there is desire to perhaps not go to the type of density that we're essentially being ordered to do in a lot of circumstances now. And so is there staff direction or advice that they can give us in regards to this request in relation to the the strategic priority of providing more housing, more density where services are available?
Is that a question for me?
Well,
Everyone's
I
looking
was
around.
kind of looking over to the side there and seeing if we might get a more global view of this application. Thank you. Ms. Terrell.
Mr. Chair, so the province requires local governments in BC to complete housing needs reports. And we're currently in the process of doing that for, or updating our housing needs reports across the CBRD. We are waiting for updated methodology to be provided by the province of BC so we can complete them. Once we have that, we'll finalize the work and we should know more this fall. I don't think that significant changes are anticipated with respect to this particular area. There's been a tremendous amount of planning work that's happened with respect to identifying growth containment boundaries, et cetera. And I think that's spoken to in the report. So, you know, at this point, it really comes down to the committee's will, whether or not you want to, you know, see this application furthered in its current form, or if you want to refer it back, or if you don't want it to continue because it's not necessarily consistent with the current OCP or what's anticipated.
Thank you, Director Acton, or Director McClinton, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. A couple questions. That maybe first, no, I'll save my comments for after. Just curious, looking at these designs here, one, can you tell me what the average square foot is? Is it the same for every unit? Can you just talk about the square footage of these units? Or is that for the applicant?
Through the chair to Director McClinton, I don't have those numbers in front of me, and I dare say that, again, this is a conceptual plan and may be revised at some point, so I don't want to answer maybe incorrect.
I'm looking at one here that has it, that says it's 600 square feet. The other one looks a little bigger, but I can't seem to find it. Anyways, we'll wait for the applicant, that's fine. And then I'm just curious, you know, I don't know this area very well, but looking at the surrounding areas, I mean, this seems like it's going to be the tallest building by a significant margin. Can you give any insights into that? I don't know if it's industrial, but what it backs onto there, what height are those buildings?
Ms. DeBetta.
Right, thank you, through the chair to Director McClinton. So it is quite taller than surrounding buildings. From Coquesada Road, it does drop down significantly. So I think the plans show, you know, sort of the viewpoint from there. So it's a 5-story building if you include the bottom floor, but it looks a little bit shorter from the road since it is lower. If you go, so like the industrial property to, like, I'm gonna say to the, what's the direction? East is the BC Transit maintenance facility. So there's a creek or a ditch that runs through there. There's some riparian vegetation, and then it's just like industrial, like a bus maintenance area.
Yep.
I'm not sure if there's a building. Maybe the applicant can.
You've answered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any further questions for staff? Thank you very much. Don't go far. Do we have the applicant here as well? We do. Welcome. Do you have anything you'd like to add to what staff have provided to us so far?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Perfect.
Chair, and thank you, committee. I've prepared a very brief slideshow. My name is Rachel Sansom, and I'm here representing the owner, Mr. Carson Shanks, who's also here and will probably provide a little more background because I'm relatively new to this file.
Maybe I'll share this to
WebEx. I will let you do that while I chatter. So we are respectfully requesting that the committee consider sending this rezoning application for this mid-sized residential apartment out for referrals so that we can work with the community towards creating this much-needed employment housing in the Cowichan Valley. We've prepared this brief presentation to introduce the project and look forward to working with the community, staff, and the board to ensure this project is beneficial and appropriate for this area. We'll also be refreshing all of the consultants' reports to reflect this version. We didn't want to do that and go through that expense until we knew we had some traction moving forward with this. That will include revised traffic reports and studies, because there have been some changes to this area with the networks and whatnot since this project was originally contemplated 3 or 4 years ago. So we will be updating all of those to reflect current legislation and current conditions. We have had a very positive response and a good working relationship with Cowichan Tribes as well through this. They've shown interest in working through the process as well as construction and beyond. So we're looking forward to working with them on that. So again, just a brief overview of what we've proposed here. So these two elevations, and I'll just start with, this has been significantly reduced from the previous application. It's about half as large. The previous application was rather massive, looking at it from Cokes Island Road. And so this upper right-hand corner, you'll see that's what you would see from Cokes Island Road. And again, you'd only see about the top 2.5 stories of that because it is quite a bit lower. The bottom image you see faces to the east towards the bus maintenance area. So that is a little taller. It does work with the topography, but again, you can see the elevation of Cokes Island Road to the left, and that it would actually have quite a low profile if you were standing from the road looking at it. The sizes of the units, we are offering 1 and 2 bedrooms. So the 1 bedrooms are approximately 600 square feet, with 2 bedrooms around 834 square feet. We've got 68 parking spaces proposed. We have bike spaces and repair areas, of course, EV charger ready, which is common these days. And we've much reduced the site coverage of this building. In that bottom floor that you see there, we have fitness rooms, dog washes, and storage lockers for the residents. And of course, we've heard often enough that Cowichan Workforce Housing Strategy has identified a real lack of employment housing in the valley. I sit on a lot of those committees and attend all those meetings, so I really do understand that there's this need. Particularly on the south side of the Cowichan River, we have the Cocos Island Industrial Area to our east and north, as well as Cobble Hill and Mill Bay that don't have this sort of housing available for the workers there, as well as agricultural workers. So again, hoping we can fulfill that need for housing here. There's currently a 1% vacancy rate, and of course we've been reviewing your housing needs study as well as your OCP to find out exactly what's needed in the valley. So by providing these permanent rental solutions, we can reduce temporary or stopgap measures and provide permanent housing for the workers in the valley. The 1 and 2 bedrooms provide opportunities for people to, entice employees to come here. They could have roommates, they could be single people, they could be married people. It's not necessarily a family-oriented building, but of course it would still work for people with children if need be. So this is what's currently proposed on the site and what it's currently zoned for. And forgive me, I believe there's 26 townhouses, not 28. So these are all 3-bedroom, and you can see how these cover the site almost completely. 28 townhomes certainly house more humans than an apartment unit does, so it's almost the same number of people would be housed in the apartment option as opposed to the currently zoned townhouses. So you can see here by this slide, which also was shown by the planner, thank you very much, it's a much more efficient use of the land. The building itself occupies quite a small portion of it. Certainly parking does take up a lot of the other space, but you can see sort of on the upper right-hand side, we have our stormwater management ponds. Stormwater management, of course, is important to everybody in that we don't want to increase the runoff from the site, but this will also treat runoff to the site. As we understand, this goes into very, very sensitive ecosystems downstream. So our consultants are really tasked with making sure that the stormwater management systems are designed, constructed, and will be maintained to function in the long term to protect the downstream ecosystems. And public consultation, of course, I know this occurred several years ago, probably different people in the neighborhood. We take this seriously. We don't expect everybody to love the project or be on board, but what we really want to do is find out what the concerns are and how to mitigate them. So if we can't get them to love the project, what can we do to make this more palatable? What can we change? And we get a lot of good ideas from this kind of consultation. So just briefly, we would do a mail out information letters to our neighborhood with all of our contact information so people can reach out at any time with questions or comments. We will hold a public open house on site prior to further consideration by committees and boards so that we can collect more information. Again, we'll advertise this with our immediate neighbors as well as the wider neighborhood. And then, of course, there's ongoing public opportunities for input at your committee and board level meetings. And then we'll also provide a communication summary with our final package so everybody can see exactly what we've heard and what we're planning to do about it. And we're available for questions. Thank you so much.
Director Acton.
Hi, Rachel. I didn't recognize you. 2 questions. Did you consider putting the parking below ground? Because you talked about having more of the land showing, and that would, it looked like by your drawings, it takes up about 2/3 of the area in parking, so it's quite ugly to look at parking lots, and it's much nicer to, go to a dry car. So wondering if you thought about putting the parking below ground.
It certainly is a good idea, and some of them might be able to tuck under there. It goes down to the expense of doing that, and then being able to afford to provide rental rates that are palatable to the community and at market values. So it is an expense consideration. I don't know if the owner is willing to have a look at that, or whether you've already had a look at that in previous. You're allowed to say something, I'm sure, through the chair, if he may.
Through the chair, I'm Carson Shanks. It really comes down to dollars and cents. Sorry, it really comes down to dollars and cents. Parking stalls underground range between $30,000 to $40,000 to $60,000 per stall. So there's a direct relationship between that cost and somebody's rent. So to try to do a market rental building without any subsidies from BC Housing, you really need to keep those costs down, which is why most of the big buildings that you're seeing up in North Cowichan are all surface parking.
Okay, and I have a second question. Second question is there, do you have a plan to ensure that they remain rental units?
As of right now, no, but we could put a rental agreement in perpetuity on title for 10, 15 years. Absolutely, that's definitely an option.
Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I've got several questions, but I think they can be answered pretty quickly. Maybe, if you don't mind staying up, I think it'd be helpful. So these units, when they're built, are going to be sold and then rented? No, you'll be managing them?
Correct, we'll manage them. It won't be stratified. So we'll run it as an apartment building, and to try to stratify a building after the fact is very difficult. So it will be a rental building in perpetuity.
Okay. And then you've used the term employment housing several times. Is that just the term that you're using, or is there some sort of formal agreement with BC Housing or something along
There's no formal agreement. We call it
so
workforce housing, people that can't afford a house but yet work at the hospital, work for budget rent-a-car, just people that, the largest employer, as far as I'm concerned, is the industrial park, and there's a lot of people there that need housing. And I share my largest property line with the industrial park.
Awesome. And just a couple more, if I may, Chair, I'll go quickly. Do you have any sense of what the market rate is?
When we started this project back in, I guess it was 2019, I think we're looking at about $1,400 a month for a 2-bedroom. I think the market rent now is $1,600, $1,800. I know Broad Street Properties are bringing units on at about $2,000 a month up near Walmart. So I hope to bring it in around $1,800 a month for a 2-bedroom.
Yeah. And last one, and I'll come back after I have some more, but why not partner with somebody like BC Build or what was the drawback there?
At 83 units, it would make sense, but at 44, it's just economies of scale. When you do a partnership with BC Housing or CMHC or whatnot, they want all levels of government to kick something in, and for 44 units, it just doesn't make sense. At 83 units, we're close, but you probably need about 140 units. That's sort of what you see in Victoria right now. You see a lot of developers like me will partner up with BC Housing or CMHC, and they'll do 49% market rent units, 51%, affordable. So it's the market rents that will offset the rents for the affordable. So really, it's just, at 44 units, we just can't make the numbers work. We'd need more density.
Yeah, thank you. I have more to say, but I'll come around. Yeah.
Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I missed the blatant elevator shaft, and I still wonder about it wasn't accessing the bedroom through a washroom, but accessing the washroom through a closet, it would appear, the walk-through closet. But more importantly, like others who have asked questions about parking, is there not a move in the province to reduce the number of cars that a developer has to provide? You've got a wonderful bike storage.
We have had issues with parking from the beginning, whether, like right now, we may have too many and not enough green space. We'll have more green space, not enough. So I really don't know what that magic number is. You know, we do have an awful lot of real estate where we can add more parking or subtract. But I think in our geographic location, you're going to have at least probably 1.4 to 1.5 stalls per unit. It's great that people want to ride a bike, but it's really not conducive to a bike style, you know, living environment. So I think the parking spots and the stalls, the numbers that we have right now will be sufficient for that building, but we can reduce. We definitely can. I just don't know what that number is.
Follow up? Okay. Any other first-time speakers? Director McClinton.
Thank you. Just a couple more. You know, I'll just start with a comment. You know, at every turn, I'm looking to add housing. We've added 1 million people to the country, and they're not just distributed equally. There are more coming here. 1 million people over the last 3 years. That's about 3% of our population, but there's way more happening on the island. So, you know, I just want to be clear that I'm in support of housing. You know, we need 600,000 new units in the next 8 years to sort of meet the demand, and that's just to kind of get us back to 2003 levels. That being said, I mean, there's just something about the look of this which really doesn't seem like it fits with the community. It's going to dramatically change the shape and the feel, and I'm just looking at those single-family homes and then this unit, you know, and I don't know if the way that, you know, the second one that you showed with the townhouses almost looked like it might be more suitable to me. I'd really be keen to hear significant community engagement about this project, because I can't imagine personally if I just, you know, bought my first house and then boom, I've got a 5-story building shooting up next to me. So I'm really conflicted with it because I like what you're trying to do. I think we need it, but we're trying to, you know, maybe serve two masters here. So those are, you know, maybe if you have comments about what the public said about the size of the building, yeah.
With respect to the size of the building, massing is an issue. But once you get to the property and you actually see what you will see from Cocosala, you're looking at maybe 2 stories, 2.5 stories. And the way that the building's situated now, you're looking at the narrowest point. So we have addressed that as the best that we can. When we say 5 stories, we are burying the basement below grade with a walkout. So really, it's no taller than a 2.5 story house that you're seeing from Cocosala. Massing is a huge concern of ours. We've done the butterfly roof line to try to mitigate massing as much as possible. Thank you.
Director Acton.
Well, this is a question for staff.
Well, can you hang on? We'll get stuff
okay.
back up here then. Director Segal, did I see you waving your hand at me a little while ago? Well, I've got that as well. So, any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much. And Ms. DeBenna, can you please jump back up here? So, question for staff, Ms. Director Acton.
Thank you. I think Director
What's his name?
Yeah. Director McClinton said it well by looking at the surrounding properties. Like, it all sounds great. It sounds, and both plans looked really good. But it's seeing it, you know, in the context of the other areas. I did notice that the APC did not support the idea, although it says 83 units, so I'm a little confused. But, so I guess the question would be, can we ask for more community input, 1? And 2, can we ask for a kind of like concept drawing, like from the road or, you know, the effect of surrounding properties?
Ms. DeBenna.
Through the chair to Director Acton. So the APC's comments are from, were on the original submission, which was for an 83 unit building. So that's been reduced. So that's, staff have recommended that, yes, since the APC did review the original submission. I'm not good at two questions. I'm sorry. What was the second one?
Is it reasonable to ask for some kind of concept drawing so that we can get a better idea of the affected properties?
Ms.
Siting?
DeBenna.
Through the Chair Director Acton again, the package they provided does have drawings that they've shared, but I'm not sure now. I'm just drawing a blank on what they provided. I mean, we can ask for more information, you know, and I guess I'm wondering what sort of other drawings you're wanting to see, like from like across Coquesila Road or.
What Director Martman talked about is like dwarfing the neighborhood.
McClinton.
What did I call you?
Martman.
Oh! Oh my goodness. Let's blame it on menopause or something.
So I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
so is it reasonable to ask about the
Ms.
dwarfing
DeBenna,
of the
go ahead.
community?
I think it's reasonable to ask for more information, but I'm not sure if what they've provided already is, like, that's not adequate enough. I don't know.
So I'm going to jump in here for a second. So I think this is exactly the concern and issue that Director McClinton has raised, is that we are in a housing crisis. The our provincial government has deemed that local governments are going to make sure housing is built. It's going to change neighborhoods. And the extent in which neighborhoods are changed are points for discussion here. So I think that the more we delay, the fewer homes are going to be built and the longer this crisis will continue. So I think that we need to focus our specific asks so that the applicants can make whatever adjustments and meet whatever requests we're making, and so that they can proceed, because in today's world, time is money, and we need to be doing our bit to ensure that housing is provided. So having said that, I saw a couple of hands go up, but I think if the applicant could come forward, because I think that was more, is it possible for us to have a greater perspective in the form of artist renderings or drawings on the impact to and the sight lines from different spots in the community?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. We can get professional renderings done that show exactly what the building will look like, including the landscaping, in front of the building and also in front of the parking. So you'll really get a good perspective from all angles about what this building will look like in reality. And we'll get the renders to include the surrounding existing uses as well.
Okay, thank you. So I had Directors Wilson and McClinton raise their hands, and I would like to get to a resolution at some point, so I'll go to Director Wilson first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this would be a question probably for the applicant. If I've got this timeline, and I agree, first of all, completely with what you've said here, right? We need to get things done if we can. This first started when, in 2019? So 5 years ago. The original concept was for townhouses?
The original concept was for 83 purpose-built rental units.
Okay, and that was the, okay, then that changed
L-shaped
now.
building, 5 stories.
Right.
Since meeting with the APC, we've dropped that down to 44
Down to
units.
44.
Correct.
Is there any, do you have any idea, and this is a very broad question, and I understand if you don't know the answer, what a projected increase in costs might be as we delay and send these things back? 5 years is a long time to delay. You've already gone.
5
Do you
years
have any
ago, I was
idea?
building duplexes in Sydney for $260 a square foot. I'm now building the same duplex for $380 a square foot. So they are drastically going up.
Okay, and final question, please, Mr. Chair. And I think you said, and I've got my notes here, that the original rent that you were talking about was $1,400 a month?
Correct.
What is it now, do you think?
I think based on CMHC, last rent rolls probably about 1,800, just shy of 1,800 for a two-bedroom.
So something like about 30%, 40%?
Correct.
30%
Correct.
at least?
Yes.
Increase in that rent?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to add, we've owned this property for 16 years, and my immediate neighbor is the industrial park. It used to be active waste.
Yeah.
It's been a whole bunch of things, and now it's, luckily BC Transit, so it's not that far off to have this building right next door to an industrial park.
Yeah.
We've got next door neighbor who is, I'm not too sure, he's a CD zone. He's got, I think, live, work. I'm not too sure what his density capability could be. There's just one neighbor that I share a property line with who will be developed as residential multifamily at some point.
Okay.
So I'd just like to put that in perspective.
Yeah, and my main concern is the rising cost. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Director McClinton to close, and we haven't heard from the director for the area yet, so I'd like to hear from Director Nicholson. Director McClinton?
Whoever wants to answer. I'd be very curious if there was mentioned support from Cowichan Tribes. If there's anything in writing we could get from them, I'd be curious to see that. My question is the second drawing with the townhomes, was that presented as an option? And was there a feedback given on that?
Ms. DeBenna?
To the APC?
Through the chair to Director McClinton, the townhouse drawings are what could currently be permitted in the current zoning. So 26 townhomes. They've just provided that for your information to see, what is currently permitted and then compared to what they're proposing. I don't believe the application wasn't assigned to me during the APC, but I don't believe there was a plan for the townhouses then. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they've just provided that, I think, for this meeting, so you can just see what the current zoning allows and then what they're proposing. Does that answer your question?
No.
Okay. They could build the townhouses. They could apply, build the townhouses. They would be subject to development permits and a building permit.
Right.
If they wanted to proceed with that.
And there's 26, and we're saying it's about the same density. Okay, I understand. That's good.
Director Nicholson, would you like to weigh in on this or provide us with a recommendation, or the floor is yours?
Well, you've heard from some of the community, and I've heard from more through Facebook and so forth. When this first came about, there was I think a public meeting, information meeting that the consultant held and so forth, and it was for a much larger apartment building, but again, it was 5 stories at the time, and people were very adamant that the area couldn't support that kind of density from an infrastructure point of view and from just what the neighborhood needed. And they are supportive. They have the zoning for townhouses, and the OCP says encourage ground-oriented multi-unit residential development, row houses, stacked houses. And that's what I've heard from the community that they want, and they really are not keen on this apartment building idea. I would also like to add that I find this really a difficult application because we're supposed to do a local area plan for this neighborhood in the next year or year and a half. And I think that's going to be very important for understanding what the infrastructure needs are if we are going to push development into the Eagle Heights area as a residential area. There are definitely issues with respect to stormwater management, with respect to being able to walk along the road safely. And it's been exacerbated since the last time we looked at this application by the landslide on Allenby. So the traffic is a real concern, and the roads just aren't safe the way they are. I would also add that the sewer and water infrastructure is aging, so that might play into it as well. So I know the community does not want this at this time, so I would like to move option 3.
Is there a seconder? Duly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Director Segal.
So respectfully, I'm not going to support this motion. I recently went to a presentation put on by Gregor Craigie around the recent book that he published called Our Crumbling Foundation, which focuses on the housing crisis that we're facing here and has a chapter specifically on Duncan. And that a really important solution is that we need homes of all sizes, so not just subsidized and not just single family. We need all the homes. And there's a real importance in mixed housing to create complete communities. So when we have single family homes only in one area, and then we have apartments or more dense housing only in another area, it blocks communities and separates people based on economic factors, and that doesn't create a complete community. This densification is in line with the draft MOCP. It's within the growth containment boundary. It's serviced. And the applicant was very clear that they want to go out to community and get more information. And these referrals will also gather more of that information that we can take into our next steps of if we want to move forward with this. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pass for the time being. Director Segal has said pretty much what I was going to say as well.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you. Well, I would argue on this issue of mixed housing that having townhouses, I think that's the kind of housing that we're really lacking in the region, particularly in the rural areas. We have a lot of single-family homes. We don't have a lot of townhouses, row houses that can be more affordable for people and more family-oriented than an apartment kind of proposal that we're seeing here. I know that we are seeing apartments going up in town, and I just feel that townhouses they just make more sense in this area and will probably support the right number of density for the area.
Director Acton to close.
Thank you. I'm gonna, it was a great conversation, and I can, in an isolated instance, I can see the merit of this application, but I'm gonna support the resolution. When I look to directors, I expect them to know their community. They've had the conversations that aren't even here at this table. They've gotten the input from key community members. They've looked at their OCP in detail. They have, they're boots on the ground in their area, and this is a huge region. So when we look at something just on paper, it looks good, but then the director adds so much more context of knowing what their community wants, and it's been proven. So I am going to support that vision that Director Nicholson holds for her community at this time.
Thank you. I'm going to call a question. All those read Resolution 3, please.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that application number RZ 20E01 for 5237 Coxsala Road, PID 001169874 be denied.
So I wasn't going to call the question, but Director McClinton wants to speak again. So, Director McClinton.
I have to just get my reasoning before. I'm very reluctantly going to be supporting the director, and I just think this misses the mark. I'm in full support of density. I think there's a way to do it, but I just feel this misses the mark. So I'll be supporting the resolution.
Director Abbott.
Just to ditto what Director McClinton said.
Call. What? Call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The next item is item R4, which is a report from the Utilities Division regarding inclusion into the Cobble Hill Village Sewer System Service Area. And there is a 2-point recommendation.
Welcome. Are you here to answer questions, or do you have some
Yes, thank you.
material?
I'm just here to answer any questions. It's pretty straightforward.
Turn to Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Very straightforward, and I'm not sure that we need any discussion on this one. It's just an inclusion into our present excellent system that we got there, so I could move the recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Next item is item R5, which is a report from the Inspections and Enforcement Division regarding the CVRD bylaw number 4582, dog regulation and impounding amendment bylaw 2024, and there is a recommendation.
Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report is to request consideration for amendments to the CVRD bylaw number 3032, dog regulation and impounding bylaw, in respect to removing the livestock compensation provisions. So it was moved and seconded by the board on the March 13th, 2024 meeting that staff prepare a report for consideration by the ESC in regard to compensation provisions of CVRD dog regulation and impounding bylaw. The CVRD has provided this compensation form within the bylaw dating back to 2007. There have been 2 claims from 2014 to 2023, and an additional claim in 2024. The funding for these claims does come through the animal control function. So either the function include funding, an additional funding, and $1,500 to accommodate for potential livestock compensation requests, or we can proceed with an amendment which will remove that funding, which is actually covered under the Livestock Protection Act. Questions?
Livestock Protection Act, which is a provincial act, correct?
It is, yeah, and the funding formula is exactly the same as what the CVRD provides. So it seems to be a bit of a double up on that provision.
Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The case that's been cited in this particular instance, I've been, or have been, quite intimately involved in, and very sad. But I have no problems with going with the recommendation, the recommended resolution here, and if necessary, I can move that.
Are you moving it?
I am.
And it's been seconded. Director Segal.
I just had a quick question. I'm in support of the motion, but with regards to the 2025 budget recommendation to add the $1,500, is that just to make up what was spent? Or if we're getting rid of this compensation, why are we adding to the budget?
So through the chair to Director Segal, that's not making up for what is spent. That is providing funds on an annual basis for such events, which must come through requisition moving forward. It's never been budgeted in the animal control function. And you can see by the report, which is Mr. McDonald's report, who's not here today. It's rarely used, and there is an avenue through the province to provide that. So it wasn't budgeted for, so there are budget considerations moving forward on an annual basis.
I feel like I'm just not comprehending something.
Yeah, I think Ms. Terrell's going to jump in and bring us all sorts of clarity.
So the recommendation, through you, Mr. Chair, the recommendation from staff is that the amendment bylaw be adopted, but the options in the report were an either or. So either you proceed with the amendment bylaw, or you request to amend the bylaw for the requisition, because we would have to have a way of compensating.
It's getting late. Director Martman.
Thank you. We went to the motion faster than I had a chance to jump in there, but that's fine. I'm challenged with a little bit of the report because it talks about this hasn't been used, so therefore the need hasn't been there. And quite frankly, I had no awareness. I'm not sure if any director had an awareness of this relief fund. So that's one aspect. So it not being used over 10 years to me is partly just a lack of awareness. The second thing, it talks about the ability or dog pack problems were common, or it dates back to a time when dog pack problems were common and ownership could not be identified. And I'm not sure if there's data that supports that's not in the case today. Or do you have something from the SPCA or?
Mr. Harris.
Through the chair to Director Martman. We had conversations with our animal control contractor regarding how many communities, we also reached out to other communities, still have this provision. And he provided us a history of essentially why this provision came to fruition as it's explained in the report. He also mentions that he serves 10 local governments on Vancouver Island, including North Couch and City of Duncan, Town of Lake Couch, and Town of Ladysmith, the RDN, District of Lanceville, Strathcona District, and City of Campbell River, and O'Barney, Kyaquet. Additionally, they service multiple First Nations lands as well. And as far as he knows, the CBRD is the only one that still carries this provision. I understand, talking to Mr. McDonald, that the CRD still has it in their bylaw, but they're looking at phasing it out. It's considered antiquated. So on the island, aside from the CRD, we're aware of no other local government that has this provision still in their animal control bylaw.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I understand that we're an outlier. I'm not sure being an outlier is all that bad sometimes. But the question I have is around, you know, the idea that packs are not common or less common today than they were 10 years ago, or that we're not having opportunities for kills. Like, I think the example most likely is WD-40 up in Parksville and the problems they had with, you know, one dog that was doing attacks. You know, it still happens. It hits the media rarely. You know, anecdotally, I can tell you that we've had dog packs on our farm. And so I guess the point that I bring up is that compensation is meaningful to someone that owns animals, and yes, the province does provide it. I would think that a provision would be responsible in a way that would provide the farmer no more than 100% compensation, and that we would top up the difference between what the province and what the worth of the animal is, or animals. But I would not be in favor of doing it through requisition. I would want this to be through the licensing, and I'm wondering if any consideration has been done to what that would cost if it was a license fee add-on.
Hang on, Mr. Harris. I'm just looking at the time here, and I think this needs to be dealt with appropriately, and I'm going to see what the table's thoughts are, referring this back to staff to get more information along the lines of what Director Martman has requested. Can I have a motion to refer? Moved and seconded. No comments, it's just for, you can provide a referral?
Yes.
Okay, please do.
I won't be supporting the referral. We talk about wasting time, and staff have brought this forward. I think it's worthwhile to just keep moving ahead and take the staff recommendation.
Any other comments on the propriety of referral? Call the question, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Going to give us 5 minutes. We have a lot of material to cover, and I understand we're losing one of us.
Oh, is the doorway dangerous? Okay, I guess you could swing it into the water. We had a doorway once. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Are you gonna come on?
Welcome back, everyone. Mr. Harris is at the mic. Ms. Harrison, what do you got for us next?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The next item is item R6, which is the report from the Inspections and Enforcement Division regarding bylaw number 4587, Development Application Procedures Amendment Bylaw 2024, and bylaw number 4588, Ticket Information Authorization Amendment Bylaw.
Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report is to request board consideration for bylaw amendments to enhance enforcement specifically within development permit areas. It essentially is requesting an amendment to our ticketing bylaw to enable ticketing through our development applications and procedures bylaw specific to unauthorized works. In addition to ticketing to support people that are not following condition permits as well, which sometimes is the scenario we come across. It was developed, or this was produced with consultation with our development services department. Any questions?
Questions for staff? Director Martman.
So sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I somehow keep saying that at this table. And this one was an eye-opener for me, especially when I rolled down to Area H and found out about things on there that I wasn't aware of, much like the recompensation for dogs. How many of these can we actually remove? Like, it seems like so many. And yet, of all the areas, I think Area H, maybe I'm competing with Area I for the least amount. Is that correct, or is it seems like all Area A, B, C, not them and us kind of thing here, but there's a lot more down where there's more population. So just curious about how those are laid out in numbers.
Mr. Harris.
Through the chair to Director Martman, if you are talking in respect to development permit areas and the coverage, I would probably just refer that to our development services department.
No, actually, it was the attachment C, I think we're looking at when you look into the different schedules. Or maybe that's all been included because of, they get into all the different schedules for all the different fines.
Okay.
Or is that not fair game for this, what you're asking for?
Yeah, I don't actually understand what you're asking.
Ms. Pressman.
I'm not sure if I either.
Ms. Churl.
Maybe I don't.
Through the chair to Director Martman, I think you're referring to attachment C to this report, which is the existing ticketing bylaw, which has all the schedules with different areas.
Yeah, so so you're talking offenses specific to Area H compared to what you see in the south end?
That's right. I thought all of this was fair game. Sorry, I read it all. So there was like 42 pages on attachment C.
Yeah.
And I read them all. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should stop at the report next time. But then when I did that, and you read through that, you get into Schedule C. It talks about all the different bylaws and then the associated fines that come out of those bylaws. Mm-hmm. And I get down to Area H, and it's easily within a half a page. Yet Shawnigan Lake is probably 5 pages.
So I'm going to jump in here. I think I get the correlation here. tickets in relation to bylaws and permits and the like, your observation that there seems to be significantly more opportunities to ticket in the lower lettered areas is correct. And I can also relate that your predecessor fought tooth and nail to reduce the number of opportunities through bylaws, development permits, restrictions of that nature to be applied to Area H. So certain areas have embraced additional permitting and regulation, and certain areas have fought it tooth and nail, and it's reflected in what you observed when you read the material on the weekend. Does that help? Does anybody want to move this recommendation? Moved, seconded? Moved and seconded. Director Acton.
Thank you. So I think it sounds great. Gives you more tools. And can you give us run through an example of when a $50,000 fine would be implemented? And then also how, the violation part that continues day after day, that obviously wouldn't be like a stop work order on a building unless they didn't stop. But, and can you give us a scenario? Okay, I'll leave it there. Just
Mr. Harris.
Sure, through the chair to Director Acton. Yeah, the Offense Act that it refers to is generally a default for local government if they don't specify a ticket amount. And it's also another means of enforcement. So we do specify ticket amounts. We are moving forward with our adjudication system for bonds. But the Offense Act is a bit of a catch-all, and what it is reserved for in this type of situation is for the more serious bylaw offenses, such as significant environmental degradation. It's something we rarely proceed with. It goes to court, there's lawyers involved, but having that in the bylaw provides us that option, if ever needed, to move that way, which we certainly hope it never has to go that way, where you're in court and you're looking at a $40,000 fine. But you look at the scale of some of the destruction and the political will and the expectations from the communities. It's nice to have it there if need be. Our default really is our municipal ticket, $1,000 failure to obtain a permit, or $500 for not obtaining your permit conditions. So what you will see, back to the Offense Act, as we move forward and amend our bylaws, as we're doing currently with the bylaw enforcement notice, where we have to amend our offense sections to include that as an option. But you will see reference to the Offense Act. It's common in all the local governments, and it's a catch-all to take the issue up the ladder, where $1,000 really just doesn't do any justification. And people can be fined every consecutive day that they continue to not be in compliance. So in that type of situation, it would be if we instruct the person to stop due to the fact that they don't have a permit and they continue to work the next day and the next day, they are subject to that fine every day.
Well, could it also be applied to people who are, say, riding dirt bikes in parks? Could it transfer over to, now that you have this tool, can you use it in other ways?
Through the chair, back to Director Acton. So are you referring to using the Offense Act for people riding dirt bikes in parks, or just municipal tickets?
Well, so something so that we could increase our fine,
Yeah, so
to make it even less desirable to be caught doing that.
absolutely. I mean, generally, any offense that continues on a daily basis or is, there's a reoffense is subject to a fine. So technically, somebody could be fined every day if they can continue to violate a bylaw and not correct the situation. So somebody riding a motorbike in a park that was where the evidence supported that clearly could be fined every time they're in a park riding their dirt bike under our parks bylaw.
It's my recollection, we had a discussion similar to this, and I think committee encouraged staff to bring forward exactly this type of ability for the penalties and the disincentive to be there so that you had those tools available to you. So with that, I don't see any further hands in the air. It has been moved and seconded, I believe. It has? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The next item is item R7, which is a report from Emergency Management Cowichan regarding Community Resiliency Investment, CR Fire Smart Grant 2024. And there is a recommendation. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board on May 8th, 2024, that a grant application for up to $1,300,000 be submitted to the Union of BC Municipalities, UBCM, Community Resiliency Investment Program, Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports, with the CVRD as the primary applicant that will apply for, receive, and manage the grant funding.
Moved by Director Nicholson, second by Director Segal. Anyone to speak to this? Director Nicholson?
I'd just like to say we had a very nice Fire Smart event at the Satlam Fire Hall last night, and it was well attended and really appreciated.
Excellent. Any other comments in regards to this? Director Deck?
And us as well in UBO, we're going to meet this Fire Smart folks next Tuesday. And I'm just super anxious for our community to make contact, learn more, and maybe benefit from some of the things they can provide. Since we're 95% forest land, it's ever present, the danger. So glad to support this.
I actually have a question, and I see we have staff on the line, so excellent. So I'm a big, yes, thank you. I'm a big proponent of the, well, I call them sprinkler protection units, but SPUs. And I note there's one for our friends on the Malahat, or at least designated to reside there. Any other plans to acquire more of those units for the region?
Yeah, to the chair and the committee, we are always planning to sort of strategically place the structural protection units where they make the most sense. Right now, this grant includes phase 2 and 3 of building a trailer. It takes 4 years to build each trailer through this grant program. So this would take the Malahats up to year 3. We had also put forward an application earlier to the board this year for Duncan and Ladysmith to both enhance the existing structural protection unit, which is held centrally right now. So it's held just off Tanzer so that it's close by for deployment out west, as well as to some of our central areas. So that previous grant included upgrades to that unit, and there was also another unit to be placed in the north for Ladysmith. So those are the 3 units that are underway. Each one takes 4 years. We do have to wait till the 4-year term is done before starting another, but we will look at it at that time.
Thank you, and great anticipation of my next question. You already answered it. And with that, we've had the resolution moved in. Oh, Director Wilson, go ahead.
Yeah, question for Ms. Neuber. One of the things excuse me, I've been working with our local fire department, and we're organising these local community fire smart ones as well. Can you tell me if the CVRD still has the WASP systems for sale here. They used to do them here in the office.
Yeah, so we don't offer them through the chair to the director. We don't offer them through the CBRD, but we do provide a number of links for people to go purchase their own. There's just better options out there for people to buy them than us buying them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Director Bartman, regarding the resolution.
Right, and actually, it's more of a question through the staff as well. It's on the sprinkler units.
The sprinkler units just raised by Director Wilson or the structural protection?
The structural protection units raised by
Please
by the
proceed.
chair. So since the chair opened that door, I was just curious if staff can comment about how any plans for manning or staffing or peopling up these units, because I think that's a common thing within my area, is it's nice to bring it in online, but we don't have the resources to use it without more people power.
Ms. Driver.
Thank you. Through the chair to the director, absolutely. So we do have a training program. Currently, the way it works is any of the fire departments across the CBRD as a whole, so that includes the municipalities as well as the improvement districts, can borrow any of the SPUs that we have and do the training on them. The training is included under our Fire Smart grants. And so what ends up happening is we have multiple fire departments trained to deliver, and then they have mutual aid agreements as well, so that they can help each other out, deploy the trained teams, and cross-train each other.
Thank you. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Just having a quick look at our 8, 9, and UB1 and the new business items. And the time left. Well, I'm just contemplating that. Let me, 2-minute break while I consult with staff.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I've heard that. What did you say? It was like 5 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, everyone. We've got 3 items. 2 of them are fairly lengthy. I've just consulted with staff. What I'd recommend is we go to UB1, reorder, and then we contemplate whether or not 8 and 9, whether we will, they are information items, but they are likely to generate a fair bit of discussion. We can either launch into them, or we can contemplate referring to them a special meeting just for those 2 items. So what's the pleasure of the committee? Should we jump to UB1 and take care of that one first? I see nodding around the room. Okay, so let's do that. So we will now entertain UB1, and remember there's some new business items. They were associated with that, correct, Ms. Harrison? Great. So, Mr. Tippett.
Good day, Mr. Chair and committee. UB1, if I'm not mistaken, is the referral from the board of bylaw 4571 back to this committee for further consideration. I had a discussion yesterday with the 2 directors whose areas are affected by bylaw 4571, and I prepared a draft resolution that I think addresses the concerns that both of them have. It's the 3rd iteration of the ones that I sent out today. Sorry for all the variations on that. I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but I assume one of the directors might. And if there are any questions, though, I'll be happy to try and answer those.
Director Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can read out the recommendation if you like, and then I can speak to it as well.
Sure, let's go with that.
Yeah, okay then. A draft resolution for the committee's consideration this afternoon, that it be recommended to the board that zoning amendment bylaw number 4571 be amended by removing clause 9.2.8 2.b.
Point of order, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one.
Ms. Harrison, what do you have?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. The recommendation, as last circulated, is that it be recommended to the board that zoning amendment bylaw number 4571 be amended by deleting headings H and I in their entirety and relabeling the subsequent headings accordingly.
Oh, that's a new one. Okay.
Do we have a seconder? Oh, mover and seconder. So, hang on. You jumped up really fast, Director Nicholson. We'll go to you first.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, that's why I jumped up.
Staff, please enlighten us.
Yes, so the resolution is kind of technical, and the multiple variations on it obviously didn't help. Sorry, Director Wilson. So the gist of the proposed change is, if you will recall the last...
Hang on, Director, or Mr. Tippett.
Yes.
Can you give us just a very abbreviated context as to, before you tell us what the change is, what the context of what we're considering?
Certainly.
Or what we were originally considering was?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chair. So essentially, as you'll recall, we proposed a number of changes to the various bylaws under Bill 44. In the original version of the Bill 44 bylaws, I also proposed a number of changes to other matters that were not driven by Bill 44, particularly the question of whether detached suites should be permitted in the agricultural land reserve or not, point number one, and point number two, whether the minimum site area requirement for detached suites, which exists in all of our, well, almost all of our bylaws right now, should be removed, similar to the measures that Bill 44 dictated for attached suites. So the bylaw we're talking about is the South Cowichan non-Bill 44 bylaw that deals with new definitions, updates to some aspects of the bylaw that needed some fine tuning, and also the question of whether or not detached suites should be permitted in the ALR or not. The last time the committee looked at bylaw 4571 in its draft form, it was decided at this table that a change would be made to the version that staff attached to the report, which recommended detached suites in the ALR and recommended removing the minimum site area requirement for detached suites from that bylaw. In electoral area A, the recommendation that came from the last committee report was to not permit suites in the agricultural land reserve, detached suites, I should say, in the agricultural land reserve at all. And in electoral area C, to permit them in the ALR except where the land was in the Coxsackie River watershed. So this, that was the form in which the bylaw went to the board and then was referred back here. So the question before committee now is, in the resolution that Kathleen read out, essentially does the recommendation, I guess, there by virtue of that resolution, is that be removed or changed from its form that it was presented to the board back to the original form, which is to say detached suites permitted in the ALR in both electoral areas A and C with no site area requirements and no restriction on whether it's inside or outside of the Coxsackie watershed. So sorry, that's kind of a confusing way to explain it, but essentially just saying detached suites in the ALR would be permitted as per the original version of the bylaw that was presented a long time ago. I hope that helps. If there's any other questions, I'll try to be clearer.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you, I understand now. So, I have a little speech here. And I mean this deeply and seriously. So, our water comes from the environment. We all need it, and we all need to share it. And water in the Coxsackie watershed is becoming increasingly scarce during our long summers. People are really suffering economically and really worried about the future of their wells and so forth. And it's a problem because our land use practices have drastically altered the way water is stored and flows through the landscape. So it moves through and out to the sea very quickly now. It doesn't, streams dry up and aquifers really suffer during those long, warm summers when we need water most. Water isn't being held back anymore. So local governments, that's us, we're tasked with land use and deciding where development is appropriate. And it's very, very minimal ability to influence this problem because much of what we're talking about is private managed forest land or ALR land. But we do have a little bit of influence. And I would say in the Coxsila, development exacerbates water scarcity. Whether it is a small development like a detached suite or if it was a large commercial development. And this past Monday evening, we had a community information night about the Coxsila. And I regret that if you missed it, you missed a good explanation of what's underway to hopefully develop a plan for sharing water into the future. So there was a very good presentation by Christina Disney, who's been studying the hydrology of the Coxsila for the last couple of years, doing her PhD at UVic. She's studying the interconnection between ground and surface water. And my takeaway was that there will be no quick fixes in the Coxsila watershed, just simply because of the way the watershed is. And so every little drop of water in the Coxsila needs to be cared for and allocated for the health of the community and for the health of the environment. So Cowichan tribes in the province are developing a water sustainability plan, hopefully to do that. And they're doing it with the community, decide how to best share water and restore the damage land use has done. It's going to take a long time, but it's really important that we start and get moving on it. And so I think it is appropriate for us to postpone any land use decisions in the Coxsila until that plan is completed, so that we can guide land use moving forward in consistently with that plan and with what the community is working towards. So I will be voting against this.
Got Director Acton next, followed by Wilson.
So not being an expert, but I have an opinion. I think there's an opportunity here. So what is the opportunity? So properties are gonna have secondary suites. They're gonna have, it's either gonna be attached or not attached. And then bylaw is gonna show up and they're not gonna have any tools but to evict people. And so that's the tool that we have in Shawnigan right now. It's a different issue. We got no sewer. But we didn't take the opportunity to fix the problem that was sewer. We just restricted it. So here, the suggestion of delaying or restricting it doesn't actually stop people and it doesn't actually address the problem. So it might, what I kind of have a question of is there something we can do? Can we require people to provide evidence of conserving water or saving water or capturing water or, in this case? So anyway, that's my comment.
Mr. Tippett, was that a comment or a question? Mr. Tippett, can you wade into that, please?
I will try, Mr. Chair. Thank you. It's a good question. I think the crux of the issue, and what Director Nicholson's saying is absolutely right. I mean, it's a watershed in crisis. The challenge, though, is that this proposed change to the bylaw, if it does move ahead as proposed by the resolution that's on the floor, it doesn't effectively change the density that's permitted on ALR land in any case, because secondary suites already permitted in the LR. So if we're really concerned about trying to, put things in a bit of a stasis until that planning work that the province is doing is completed, we should probably have a much more global approach to this, including reviewing existing regulations, which really, in the case of this is example, are probably as much of a problem as the proposed changes. Are actually way more, because I mean the density is already permitted one way or the other. Getting back to the Director Acton's question about alternative sources of water and so on, the board did adopt the proof of water requirement at the last meeting for building permits. There's an element in there that would probably in many cases, if not all, I'm speculating here, but I don't really know, make it very difficult to have a detached suite just by virtue of the arrangement for water in an unserviced area. If you're on your own well, you're not allowed to share a well unless you're a water purveyor. Getting that kind of a permission from the province is going to prove to be difficult. Having said that, maybe someone can, but if they have multiple wells, for example. As far as alternative sources of water are concerned, that's something that we're thinking of in a further possible update to the Works and Services bylaw, maybe following some of the work that's been done on some of the Gulf Islands in that regard. We've only just got the idea of doing that review at this time. We're not going to be ready to present a report on that for some time, but it's certainly in the forefront of our minds. But it's not ready for prime time right now. We don't really have a draft that would be workable at this point. I hope that answers that question.
And just before I go to the next speakers and add to my list, which I think I had McClinton and Martman, is there a time sensitivity to this specific resolution, just given some of the other changes we had to make that had time sensitivity?
Mr. Chair, no, this is not a Bill 44 related bylaw, or it's not, a response to Bill 44. So we're not under pressure from the province to do anything with it at any particular timeline. It's at the board's pleasure.
Okay, thank you. And I'm trying to be cognizant of the time and staff. I'd like to poll the committee about 8 and 9 and whether or not we can push that off to another meeting. Everybody fine with that?
As long as it's not special.
All of our meetings are special, Director McClinton. So we'll, I think at this point, it's more than fair to, because I'm getting pretty exhausted. Do we have a resolution on the floor? Okay, so I'm going to suggest that if staff want to.
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
Point of order.
What's
I
your
brought
point?
this resolution forward and I've not been given the chance to speak there, so I do need that chance to speak here.
And you will.
Thank you.
So I'm looking to committee. We seem to have general consensus of moving those two items, so I'd like to let staff, if they want to stay, fine, but we'll move those to another item and we'll continue on this. With that, I've got Director Wilson next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think a word of explanation here as far as the Cowichan watershed is concerned, the river. I will support Director Nicholson on these 100% every time. In this particular case, I think what Mr. Tippett has said has clarified a lot, but I think we need to clarify some more here, in that the ALC does already permit a non-detached or an attached building of a certain area and a detached one as well. We would then, if we don't walk this backwards, be in conflict with the ALC and their directives. And the farmer could just as easily go there. So when I agreed, and I did agree to include the ALR within Area C of the Cowichan watershed, within that area to help out Director Nicholson, I have now seen unforeseen and unintended consequences in that. My intention was to protect A, the watershed, and B, the ability of the farmers to plan for the future and for the succession of younger generations. That has now come forward that they may not be able to do that with a detached building. They would still be able to have a non-detached to their thingy there. So what we're doing is we're giving them the chance to have that detached, to give their future generations their privacy away from the main building. The ALC allows that, and we are now in conflict by not, would be in conflict by not allowing that. And I think Mr. Tibbet can confirm that there. So within the Area C, there is only 2% of Area C within the Cowichan watershed. It is a very small amount, and I know what you mean, but we do as much as we can. These are responsible farmers. I think they're going to preserve as much as they can. It's their future as well. And just to finish up here, I'm going to read a paragraph from a news article that appeared in the Citizen today. Just one paragraph. According to the Capital Region Food and Agriculture Initiatives Roundtable, Vancouver Island produced as much as 85% of the island's food supply in the 1950s. That number has plummeted to about 6% today, according to Hervin Louvieux, can't pronounce that properly, and the situation shows no sign of improving. We need to protect our farmers, and we need to give them that flexibility to be able to provide for their future generations and not be in contradiction with the ALC and ALR. So I'm asking that Area C, that we be excluded from this particular one and allow detached buildings. I think that includes Area A as well. And before I go any further, Mr. Chair, I do apologise for my outburst just now. It wasn't necessary.
Director Segal. Oh, sorry, Mr. Tibbet.
Mr. Chair, I had a question, I think it was a question, not a rhetorical question, from Director Wilson. He's partially correct in saying that we would be in conflict with the Agricultural Land Commission, but not really a direct conflict. The way that they've dealt with detached suites in their legislation is they have said local governments may choose to permit it in the ALR, and if they do, they're okay with that, but it doesn't require us to. So that's a bit of a nuance there. So I just wanted that piece of clarity on the table.
Director Segal.
Thank you, and thank you to Mike Tippett for working with us. I've been giving this one a lot of thought, and what really, for the committee, what really helped me was that currently attached suites of 85 square meters are allowed. This will allow the opportunity to have the attached suite or the detached, not and. So we're not actually adding another building opportunity. And the sizes are the same. They're both 85 square meters. There's the limit. So it's an or. One's already allowed, so it's just providing a bit of flexibility. I also really took the time to review the Uplands report, the Agricultural Policy and Regulations Best Practices for the Cowichan Valley Regional District, which recommended the addition of detached suites on ALR lands. I was hoping for an agricultural committee to get, community input, but this is kind of the best alternative. And that report, really provides extensive insight into the needs of the agricultural community and how local regulations can support agriculture. And they also hosted an agricultural meeting, the CVRD hosted, and the key point was brought up in the frustrations where in the local agricultural community where local zoning and ALC regulations don't jive. So allowing detached suites brings that local zoning in line with ALC regulations to allow for small secondary dwellings under certain circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Segal. Director McClinton.
I'll make it quick. Thank you, Chair. Just fully in support of this motion. Families, homeowners, farmers are dying for the opportunity to take care of their families, and dying, maybe I should use a different word, but are looking for that opportunity. In my opinion, there's nobody that can steward their land better than those folks, and we should be looking for more opportunities like this. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll wait till we vote on the resolution. Director Nicholson? Oh, Director Martman, sorry, I had you on the list.
I think Benjamin Franklin said, we don't recognize the value of our well until it runs dry. And I think we're missing the point, or the idea of detached suites or attached suites, density on farmland works when you have water. Doesn't work when you don't have water. There is no farming, period. It stops. And so I think what Director Nicholson is saying, it's a crisis. And, you know, when you're at that point, farmers are not going to have the water if you add more users to it. They don't have the water now. So the point, I think, from my perspective is, how do you best preserve farming through saying, yeah, this is a tough decision. I really feel that it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't take care of your water, how can you have shelter? So, and we need to take care of our water first. So, yeah, I would not be in favor of allowing detached suites during a water crisis. And that's my caveat to it. Thanks.
Director Nicholson?
Yeah, I would just like to add that I'm not saying that this may be something that should happen in the future, but it should be based on the plan that's being developed for the Cooks Isle watershed. And I don't think it's being respectful of the process that's underway to make changes that, I think detached, I think that's a thin edge of the wedge on the development front. And I would also add that it is, you don't have farming without water. There are already people who have bought land in the Cooks Isle watershed expecting to farm, and all of a sudden they can't even get a water license to farm. So it's a pretty significant issue. People are starting to talk about the kind of crops that we will be able to grow in the future. And, so those are huge changes. This is a big change, and I think the one thing that we've really tried to do is to say to have the whole community understand that everyone is part of the solution. Everyone has to take a hit and change what they're doing so that we can maybe have a future in the Cooks Isle.
Director Segal?
Thank you. I don't disagree with the comments around water, but this is not adding more users. Secondary suites are already allowed. It's just allowing for it to be attached or detached. So just so that we're clear on the decision we're making. We're not adding more users.
Director Martman?
So back to staff then, I thought it was clear that when you have a detached suite, you need another well. Is that correct, or?
Mr. Chair, it's the provincial regulation requires if you're not part of a community water service and you want to have a physically separate building and to share a water source, whether a well or surface license, that you have to become a water purveyor. So that's almost an impossible task. If you were to talk to any of our utilities people, it's a challenge to run systems with 75 connections, never mind 2. So that's unlikely. There may be farms out there that have 2 licensed wells already, which are suitable, in which case they may be able to do it. Yeah, so I don't know if that, let's put it this way, if it's a property in the Cooks Isle watershed that's serviced right now by 1 licensed well, it's highly unlikely that they would be able, at least using provincial law, to get a detached suite. You are allowed to share a water source if it's an attached suite.
All right, I'm going to call the question. We've had the resolution read out. It's kind of a technical one. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion fails. There's 8 of us. There's 8 of us. It's a tied vote. The motion fails. And I'm going to take this very brief moment to just suggest that I don't know which meeting it was, but it was probably the couple before the last board meeting. We would be far better off to refer than amend on the fly. So I would ask all of you to contemplate when we've got an issue like this, that we refer to staff when it's not time sensitive, so that we can try to get it right the first time. This went from committee to board to back, and now it fails. So we'll have to talk to staff about what the next step might be. Director Acton?
Thank you. Mr. Tippett mentioned that it would be appropriate for this to be reviewed with the total regulations. I wrote it down.
That was a more global approach.
So a more global approach, so maybe we look at it that way.
Well, Mr. Tippett?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Clarify, please.
Yeah, for clarity, I was referring to the Coxsila watershed crisis, or maybe the watershed crisis generally. I mean, I don't think I think Coxsila is the canary in the coal mine, maybe. But to follow up on Director Nicholson's comments, which are very well founded, it would be appropriate to consider the issue of water supply globally and possibly have a number of amendments to existing bylaws, which would, possibly look at downzoning in some cases to try and deal with, support for future options in dealing with the drought that appears to be on us. But I wasn't specifically referring to this particular bylaw being subject to that process. It was more a response to Director Nicholson's thoughts on, the Coxsila watershed as a whole.
Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know where this fits in, but I would be very, very interested to have, if possible, somebody from the province to come speak to us. And I don't know if that can be a suggestion to staff to maybe reach out, but I think I would just be very interested to hear what they have to say, and I don't know if that can happen.
Well, let me sort of, where I think we sit right now, we've just had UB1 fail. We're going to need to get some direction from staff on how we proceed. I think what you've just brought up is something I turn and look to our CAO and ask if you can just take that as direction to arrange for the water licensing people to pay us a little visit and expand on some of the questions that we have. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think related to planning and authorizations, we've talked about this before, but never received the formal direction. Like, I think this has been a topic I've heard a number of times, is potentially wanting to have the province come and provide some information. So if a motion comes forwards now, I think if you're looking for that, maybe a little bit more information can be discussed offline about the topics that you'd like to have raised. But yeah, we're happy to plan to invite them and to committee.
Director Nicholson.
Yeah, I think this is really important, but I also think this is something that should be dealt with in the context of the region as a whole. It's not just the electoral areas, and I was hoping that the regional growth strategy conversation was going to lead us to have this happen, because I think people really need to understand the risks with water all over the place. It's not just the Coxsila, for sure.
So just to pull back a little bit, are you asking if they're for a formal resolution to have provincial staff attend to speak to us?
I think probably committee of the whole, Mr. Chair, would be appropriate. That would be the regional kind of angle that you're proposing, Director Nicholson. And it depends on what you're looking to have. Is it a workshop? Are you looking for just a presentation?
Well, I would look to committee. I think we've got sort of two issues here. We've got the broader regional global water question, and we also have what are the rules in electoral areas for, you know, accessing wells, getting licensed, that sort of thing. So I turn to committee. Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. Kind of what I was originally thinking, you know, I know we've had Modi come present. I'm looking for, you know, like a status update. What are they seeing and how does that fit with what we're saying at this table? So just an overview from their point of view. I feel like there's a disconnect and it's actually, I'm not sure actually, it may or may not be it, but I just think hearing from them and because we know of developments that are happening where wells are being approved and seems to fly in the face of some of the things we're saying here, and I would just like to square those two things, yeah, and I think that could help, so.
Mr. Chair, to propose like a special committee of the whole, you're probably gonna want an hour for something of that. You're gonna wanna have some conversation and ask some questions. It's gonna need some time.
So here's the fun part. We can't recommend anything for committee of the whole, so I'm just wanting to give general direction to the staff that these questions be addressed and you bring it to the appropriate committee. Okay? I've just been handed a note in regards to the last item. There are options that the number one, in no particular order, that the bylaw be returned back to staff for additional work, or that it be recommended to the board that the bylaw not be proceeded with. So I believe this was initially brought to light by Director Wilson. Oh, look at that. We've got Mr. Rolfe at the...
Mr. Chair, the third option is that the bylaw return to the board in its original form. Sorry, that was very abrupt.
Well, hang on, I'm trying to get my brain to work.
So the bylaw was recommended for consideration from the previous EAC. It was referred back in its original form. The motion that was presented was to amend it. That motion failed, so it is still in its original form. So it could return to the board in its original form, I believe.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, sorry to also abruptly interject here, but there are elements of that proposed bylaw, no matter what happens with the detached suites part, that are quite important, such as redefining certain key terms and correcting a few errors in the text of the bylaw as well. So I'd, if I could give you my advice right now, it would be don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just, I need to have this square in my head. Did we ever recommend in its original form to the board? We didn't. We recommended the amended. No. That's what he says, and that's what I remember. We amended it on the fly in committee and recommended the amended version to the board, so that doesn't exist.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you are correct. I said that in my garbled presentation before, that it was presented in the form that the proposed amendment today was going to take it back to, and it was altered at the first appearance before the committee to include this element of none in the LR in Area A and no detached suites in the Cook-Sila watershed in the LR in Area C.
So I don't want to get any more confused. Can we please refer the matter to staff to come back at the next meeting? Moved? Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Can I have a motion to refer 8 and 9 to an upcoming meeting? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. That brings us to, well, the new business we've considered, have we not, Ms. Harrison? Do we have to do anything?
You can just receive them for information.
The new business items, everybody comfortable with receiving the information? Excellent. Question period. I would now like to invite anyone that would like to ask a question of the chair. Question period is the opportunity to, is our opportunity to offer the public to ask a question regarding the business of the CVRD. The question period allows for the allotment of 15 minutes and comprised of two parts. The first is reserved for questions directly related to agenda items. If there's time remaining, questions on a matter of public interest related to the CVRD jurisdiction. Each questioner is permitted to ask one question plus a follow-up question related to the answer. The question must be truly a question and not a statement of opinion or speech. Questioners must avoid personal references, insinuations, violence, language, disrespectful remarks of another person, or unparliamentary language. I would now invite anyone that would like to pose a question to this tired chair to do so now. No one wants to ask a question of me? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for your patience, one and all.